6. He'll be a first grader.
Okay, kids, here we go.
It's close to 7.
Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order and welcome you to the regular meeting of the Milwaukee Planning Commission. Agendas and additional copies of staff reports are available on the table in the hall. If you have not picked up an agenda, please do so. It contains important information about the process. If you wish to be included in the mailing list for a decision, please add your name and contact information to the sign-up list located on the table in the hallway. If you wish to testify, please also fill out a yellow comment card. We will follow the basic format listed on the back of the agenda. It includes all the hearing procedure steps. We may vary from the process based on the specific circumstances of each hearing. Next on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the May 23rd, 2017 meeting. Does anyone have any corrections to make?
Nope.
No.
No.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the notes as presented.
I move to approve the May 23rd notes as presented.
I'll second that.
So moved by Commissioner Travis and seconded by Vice Chair Argo. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Hearing none, it passes. Informational items. Are there any informational items from staff?
I have two. The first is that tonight is the first night that we are actually broadcasting this and recording it for YouTube, and as opposed to the Granicus system that we used to use. And YouTube should hopefully will make it a little easier for everyone. But the one complicating factor with YouTube is that it requires either Google Chrome or Firefox to view it and make it operate. Apparently Internet Explorer will not work. So if folks are watching this now, they may already need to know that. But anyway, that is the one announcement that I was supposed to make about YouTube. The other thing I wanted to let you know about was that on July 18th, the council met and held a hearing on the North Milwaukee Industrial Area project and adopted a resolution directing staff to move forward with the NMI plan, and we will be bringing that back to Planning Commission probably late fall for adoption of the comp plan and code amendments. So they recommended most things. They didn't recommend all of the Planning Commission recommendations.
They recommended one thing that we suggested from the Planning Commission, which was FAR and height bonuses for ecological or for the eco district bonuses. Everything else got rejected.
Well,
I'll put that out.
I think the waste management was one that I think it was similar to what the commission recommended. And
but no retail below, housing above in that certain zone, and the 30,000 square feet conditional use also got wiped away.
Yeah. But, well, you'll get another crack at talking about those things.
Just thought I'd let everybody know.
How strongly you feel about them. So, okay, but anyway, I just wanted to let you know that happened on the 18th.
Are we going to talk about this handout that you gave us?
No, I really hadn't.
For the official record, they spelled I know nobody can pronounce it, but it's kind of easy to spell, but they spelled it Hember. So if you could check your records and make sure that my name is spelled correctly in the planning department, that'd be wonderful. Or to the state. Because, actually, I guess that relieves me of any sort of financial responsibility if they don't know how to spell my last name, right?
That's just the League of Oregon Cities. That's not the state. Yeah. So.
Audience part. Thank you, Denny. Anything else?
That's it.
Audience participation. This is an opportunity to comment on items not on tonight's agenda. If you wish to comment on an item that is on the agenda, there will be time for comments after the presentation. Does anyone wish to comment on an item that is not on tonight's agenda? And just so I see a lot of people in the audience, and I haven't seen a yellow card, so if you do want to testify on one of the items in the agenda, out in the hallway, there are yellow cards that need to be filled out, and Denny, or I don't know how long David's staying, but Denny will be here all night. Just go ahead and hand it up to him. And I think we're going straight into a work session item, which is Summary of Vision and Comprehensive Plan by Mr. Leviton.
All right, thank you, Chair Hemer, Commissioners. I'm going to try to keep this brief tonight since we do have a couple of hearings and we have a pretty large audience. Although for those of you that have heard me speak, brief is a relative term, so we'll watch out on that. But I wanted to give just a brief update, a status check on where we are at with the community vision, and then kind of transition into the early work that we're doing on the comprehensive plan. We're going to be asking, at the conclusion of that, we'll be asking a question. We're proposing to form what's called a comprehensive plan advisory committee, similar to the vision advisory committee for the community vision. And we, as we indicated in the staff report, we would like to have a designated member from the Planning Commission. So kind of at the end of my presentation, when we kind of talk about the comprehensive plan related items, we'd like to get your feedback as far as if you'd like to appoint someone, whether you would like people to just be able to apply through the at-large process, a combination of both. So that is the one item where we would like to get some feedback from the Planning Commission. So anyways, as far as the community vision, it's been a while since we've been here to brief the commission on the vision. It's a combination of just the number of items that you guys have had and being able to find time for it. But we've done really a lot of work over the last 6 months since we've been here. Tried to kind of describe that within the staff report, but you know, really we wanted to focus a lot on the public involvement, really get the community involved and really get buy-in on the community vision. And we were, you know, pretty happy with the results of the community involvement. We actually just submitted for public participation and community involvement award from Oregon APA. So we're hoping to hear about that within the next couple of months. But really just to give a brief summary as far as some of the items that we've worked on. Kind of the last time that we were here, really the focus in winter 2017 was on developing the vision statement. We presented it at the second town hall, which was in February, really to kind of refine it, to get any last kind of additions from the community. And by early March, we had largely finalized the vision statement. We presented that to the City Council in, I believe, on March 21st, and they loved it, and it was actually very much prominently featured in their goal setting exercise that they did in April to basically establish the 2-year goals, the 2017-2018 council goals. And kind of just to provide a little bit more information on that, there really was a lot of coordination between the council goal setting and the community vision, and that was something that we were very happy about. The City Council has definitely bought into this visioning exercise. There are 3 council goals for 2017-2018, are housing affordability, completing Milwaukee Bay Park, and developing a climate action plan. And all 3 of those things were derived directly from input that we received from the various public outreach events, whether it be the second town hall in February, where we kind of started to really develop our list of action items, a lot of the community conversations that we did in spring 2017 really affirmed some of those ideas. And so where we're at now is that we've taken kind of the last major item that we did in our public outreach before really getting into the adoption process was we did one final online survey in May of 2017, so about 2 months ago, where we asked people to prioritize their top 2 action items in each of the goal area statements that we had established, just to provide a little bit of a reminder on that. We are using what's called a quadruple bottom line framework for sustainability, where we're considering action items as they relate to what we're calling the 4 Ps, which are people, place, planet, and prosperity. And then under each of those 4 Ps, we have a list of 3 goal area statements that kind of are some of the major categories, whether they be waterfront access, whether they be environmental sustainability, housing affordability, so a variety of different topics within those 4 Ps. And then we developed a series of action items based on input that we received from the community through all the different outreach events. And what we did in our final online survey and what made it into the final action plan, which I believe is attachment 2, which is the main action plan, as we had the community prioritize their top 2 in each of those 12 goal area statements. And those are the items that are going to be the focus for implementation within this first 2-year period. Our plan is to periodically update the action plan in conjunction with the council's goal setting. So plan to do an update at least every 2 years, and that will allow us to evaluate whether items have been completed, whether they're underway, whether they should stay within the main action plan document, whether items from the action plan appendix, which is kind of all the rest of the action items that weren't included in the top 2 priorities, whether items from there should be pulled up into the main action plan. So it's really the opportunity kind of at the citywide level. We're really wanting to involve all the different departments, not just have this be a planning document. We've been involving the department heads, and we plan to have a pretty regular discussion with the council, with the planning commission, with different department heads about how we basically go through the process of updating and keeping this document fresh, and actually having it be something that drives city decisions in the future. And if the council goal setting in this first year is any indication, we're pretty confident this document is actually going to be very much integrated in the way that the city operates. So as of now, we had a work session with the City Council on July 5th, and originally we were planning to have that work session and then have the adoption of the document be on August 1st. The council had some great feedback that required us to do some revisions, spend some additional time on revising some items. So we're actually going back for an additional work session next Tuesday on August 1st for anyone that's interested. So we'll be basically presenting the changes and then seeking direction on whether we're ready to present a final recommended document for adoption at the September 5th City Council meeting. I would like to just give I guess for lack of a better term, a shout out to our Vision Advisory Committee. They have done just kind of yeoman's work, whether it was attending meetings that I scheduled in the middle of an ice storm or, attending multiple times. I know that Chair Hemer attended a number of our meetings, and they really just are a group of residents that are just very much involved and very much interested, and so we wouldn't have been able to really get to where we're at without them. And this is what we envisioned, and to actually see it come to fruition was very rewarding and was really a large part of our application for the OAPA award. So I don't know if you guys had any questions about the vision, just about the status of that, or else I can kind of delve into the comp plan related work and the transition to that work.
I think you may have answered this, but I want to reiterate a statement. And this is not a reflection on you. I am reading a document that was from 1990. And now that my phone flipped, by the year 2015, Milwaukee is a culturally and economically diverse city that capitalizes upon its role as a transportation and economic hub in the region. Milwaukee's established neighborhoods connect to an expanded central civic, commercial, and cultural center. A wide mix of employment opportunities responds proactively to new technology and efficiently utilizes the city's human and natural resources. The riverfront, city center, and other neighborhood and employment centers are connected by a green space network. The city is easily walkable. Residents and visitors alike enjoy the vibrancy of healthy commercial districts, high-quality schools, innovative urban design, and safe and attractive public spaces. I would say that sounds a lot like the vision statement that we're putting by 2040. So what went wrong in 1990, besides the light rail coming, making it a big transportation hub? But what went wrong with this one that is going to be changed for 2040 so we actually meet these visions? And I think that you probably said it maybe by meeting with council and always updating it. I just want to make sure that our taxpayers and the time that has been spent on this actually gets implemented.
So yeah, I mean, to answer that question, obviously, you know, we've used that document very much as a foundation. It's from 1995, and it looked 20 years ahead, and it actually was pretty accurate as, you know, in estimating maybe that's a good or a bad thing as far as that it would take 20 years for light rail to arrive. But we did very much use that. I think early on in the process when we were discussing the comprehensive plan update, it was actually just shortly before I got here in early 2016, the council basically was presented with a number of different options as far as how they would like to initiate that comprehensive plan update. And it was the council's direction that they did want to have a very robust visioning process, that they did want to be, if it was either to go in a new direction or if it was to affirm the existing community vision, that was council's direction, that they wanted to have basically a year-long process to allow people to weigh in a number of different venues and a number of different formats on really, they wanted to establish a strong foundation for what the community wanted before we go in and start, you know, updating the comprehensive plan. So that was the thought process on that. I wouldn't say that there was anything wrong. I think it was the council deciding that they would like, that it has been 20 years really since, it's been 20 years since we did a vision, and it's really been more, almost 30 years since we did a full comprehensive plan update. And so I don't think it's an indictment on the work that was done 20 years ago. And I don't think it was the council just deciding that they'd like to spend a year working on this. I think they really saw the value in it. And we've really been able to derive a lot of the major focus areas, a lot of the community priorities, a lot of the things that we're going to incorporate into our work plan for the comprehensive plan have been derived from this community visioning process, which is, you know, statewide planning goal 1 is about community involvement. It's very much, it's number 1 for a reason. And that's really what we see as this, we're not going into periodic review, but just this process that's been involved with community visioning has very much met, you know, a bulk of our goal 1 requirements. So that's, I think, what I would say as far as what the value, really the value of this process was, you know, allowing the community to have that direct input into the process. So.
You know, one other thing about it is there wasn't an action plan that accompanied that vision. It was done, I think, strictly for the comprehensive plan. And our community vision attempted to be broader than just land use and just the comp plan. So it was something that was really intended to support council goal setting over time. I think that's a key difference in the two. And the new one talks a lot more about climate change related issues and other aspects of equity and things that are more current issues that weren't issues 25 years ago.
And I, too, want to compliment the city, David, you in particular, the visionary and the consultant team, which I'm sorry that I cannot remember their name. One, I went to all the workshops. The workshops were fun and unique, and I think that they involved a lot of citizenship. I went to the meetings, too, and I was amazed with the amount of respect and discussion that went along with everybody else's idea. And one thing that I would like you guys to continue to is having an interpreter of somebody who speaks Spanish, so that we can include those citizens, and maybe we could even get a Russian or a Ukrainian translator too, to include that large part of our population as well.
Yeah, and so related to that, there is an item directly related to that within the action plan as far as upping the number of translated materials and providing translation services. And so those you know, are the types of things that we got out of this. And you know, there were examples like at the first town hall, we didn't have kind of on-demand translation, and that actually was somewhat of an issue. I think there was expectation for that, and so this process kind of basically we learned as we were going. And so it was helpful in that, and it's going to help us at a citywide level as we move forward, because when you do have a very engaged community, when you have a process and a project where there are a lot of different stakeholders and a wealth of diversity as far as those stakeholders, yeah, these are things that we learned along the way. So. And
another thing about it, you had events that could engage children as well, and there is nothing better than to get young people involved in the citizenship of their town, their state, or their country by having them at least get some experience and some understanding of what involvement means, and I think that was also a wonderful addition.
Thank you.
I had a question about the survey and the responses to the survey, and so the top 2 action items, are they, there's more than 2 that are bolded in here, or how, where are those listed that we can see the ranking of the top 2 action items for each of the 12 goal areas?
So the reason that there are more than 2 bolded in some of these, why there are more than 24 actions, is that there was an opportunity for both the council and the Vision Advisory Committee to elevate some additional items.
Okay.
Basically items related to council goals, items you know, that were kind of already underway that we saw as an opportunity to really get those things done. The top 2 are generally the ones are generally 1.1 and 1.2. So then, like on people theme 1, the top 2 are 1.1 and 1.2, and then Councillor Falconer specifically requested that we include goal 1.3 in that as well, and so that's why there's more than 3. Okay. So we do have an attachment. If you're interested, we have a version of this spreadsheet where we actually have an additional column with the number of responses for each one, if you'd be interested in seeing something like that. But that's kind of the long and short of it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
Any other questions on the process or the visionary?
I'm curious, I'm glad to see the quantitative metrics associated with the goals, and I'm curious if the goals that aren't bolded, will those, well, both the bolded ones that are being acted on now and the non-bolded ones that are kind of for the future, will there be an annual reporting process? Yeah, there will be, and that's obviously something we still need to develop, but that would be part of the reporting. So kind of the major update would probably be every 2 years, but there will be a reporting process, ideally established more on an annual basis as opposed to a biannual. And that's for all of the actions, not just... Correct, yeah. There are items that, you know, just because something isn't listed within the main action plan document, if it's something that a department is already doing, and it dovetails with their work program within a department, there is the opportunity, and that's something that we would like to measure and show that these are some items that we're doing as well above and beyond what's included within the main document. I hope you highlighted for your OAPA award the quantitative nature of this, because I think they'll look favorably upon that. Yeah, so we did call that out as far as being able to measure it. So.
No? All right. So the comprehensive plan update idea.
So yeah, this will just be really brief, but basically we're now largely with the completion of the vision, we're transitioning into the comp plan update. As I said, we're for the vision, we use this quadruple bottom line framework, and kind of the results that we got and the different categories and goal area statements that we created, we thought, made for a very natural transition into the comprehensive plan work. And so we're in the process of really developing our scope and a very detailed work plan that's going to be categorized. I gave an example from the city of Hillsborough. I believe it was the final attachment. They went through a similar process where they developed kind of these core areas, these essentially goal area statements within their vision, and then they slightly tweaked them as they moved into the comprehensive plan. And so that's what we're in the process of doing now. So instead of just having it categorized kind of traditionally by the statewide planning goals, Chapter 1, housing, Chapter 2, we're kind of grouping them because basically what the quadruple bottom line framework showed us is that when you're talking about place, you're talking about housing, you're talking about transportation, you're talking about recreation. There are a lot of these items that really, when you're talking about complete neighborhoods, a lot of different things go into them. And so that's how we're planning on organizing the comprehensive plan. We're going to be meeting with Jennifer Donnelly from DLCD in the coming weeks, and just to kind of discuss our work plan to make sure that we're still compliant with all the statewide planning goals. Denny and I have started to really look through and kind of do a crosswalk between the planning goals and some of our goal area statements. So I think they fit naturally within this framework, and so that's our plan in the coming weeks. Especially, we really want to hash that out, develop a scope, identify any consultant assistance that we need, and really just have the project ready to go upon adoption of the vision and the action plan. So that kind of brings us to the final item related to the comprehensive plan. We have the existing comprehensive plan calls for the formation of a comprehensive plan review committee anytime we go into periodic review. We're not going into periodic review, which is kind of where you kind of establish a work program and work with the state to make sure that you're compliant with your work program. But we're, given the amount of community involvement we've already done and the fact that our plan is 29 years old, we're doing something, at least within a certain number of the kind of the core subject areas that would approach periodic review as far as the level of detail. We're going to be assessing our current policies. We're going to be going through identifying things that are outdated, items from the community vision that need to be incorporated in, additional policies that need to be developed. So that is really getting to kind of that level. And so we wanted to have a committee that is similar to what we did for the Vision Advisory Committee. So I believe the July 18th, maybe it was the one before, the July 11th council study session, we spoke with the city council about what they'd like to see within that advisory committee, and they provided us some direction. They would like it to be appointed through an at-large application process. With that being said, they would like us to, reach out to try to ensure kind of a diversity of different stakeholders from the different neighborhoods, from different business districts, from environmental groups. So we're going to be doing some targeted recruitment as well, but it's going to be through an at-large process. The two recommendations that we had related to that committee is we would like to have one designated council liaison and one designated planning commission liaison. And so I know that there are only 4 of you here this evening, but we did want to kind of get your feedback on, would you like to have that appointed by the planning commission? Would you guys like to apply through the at-large process? We do want to have a planning commissioner, just given the amount of work that the planning commission is going to be doing on the comprehensive plan. We want to have that kind of person that is clued into all of the work that the advisory committee is doing. So that's, the one thing that we would like you to consider tonight. And, I don't know what, I'd like to hear what your thoughts are on that, as far as if you'd like to appoint someone or have it through that application process.
Do you want a name tonight?
We don't necessarily need a name tonight. I mean, it obviously would have been ideal if everyone could weigh in. I guess you could look at it as, are you going to reward someone or punish someone that's not here? But I don't think we need a name. I think we can reach out to the full commission. I guess we'd be interested at least in the 4 the 4 members' opinions tonight as far as you think it would be better to have that discussion. We're planning on, we're discussing this with the City Council next Tuesday, and we actually would like to open up the recruitment later next week, just so we can try to get this committee appointed as soon as possible. That being said, you know, if we're doing it through an appointment process, you're not as constricted by that timeline.
Do you have a general workload kind of thought up in your head?
Yeah, so I think the thought is that, you know, the comp plan is expected to be about a 2-year process, so it would be about that 2-year commitment. Our expectation is that there'd be meetings probably every other month. You know, it might be a little bit more frequent in the beginning just as we ramp things up, but the thought is probably, you know, on average, you know, 2 hours per month. I mean, there would be time to review materials as well, but as far as the actual meeting time, when you...
I think you're being conservative, but that's okay.
Well, on the meeting time, but there would definitely be more time than that on as far as reviewing materials.
So I will give my, well, let's look at it this way. Is there anybody that is sitting in right here, right now, that wants to jump right on up and be on it?
I'm extremely interested, but I'm also very committed to a universal process of commissioners getting to voice their desires.
Right. And the reason why, I guess the reason why I'm asking this is that at an at-large process, are they only, I'm assuming they're only going to take one planning commissioner, correct? Right.
Yeah, I think so.
And so my question is that I was going to say, oh, well, if everybody's interested and we all go in and compete and we'll let whoever else decide, or we can let ourselves decide.
Mm-hmm. But can we decide without the rest of the commissioners?
We don't have to pick a name tonight.
Right,
I'm just saying the open question is that, you know, if all 4 of us wanted to do it and we thought that we'd end up having an MMA match over it, then I would say, well, let's go turn it in, let's just do it at large and let whoever picks going to pick.
Yeah.
Or, you know, if we recognize that one person here wants to do it and Adam's interested, I know I'm interested.
Interested but not able to commit the time with
and
2 kids under 2.
Right, yeah. I know that you have a very young one at home. And so, and I don't know what, and Shayna, of course, was on the visionary committee. She's coming back in August, probably. She's had a leave of absence, so. And I don't know what Sherry's or Scott's commitments are either, but I think we all can work itself out amongst ourselves. Or if there's 5 people that are adamantly wanting to be on it, then we can all turn in our things and go kiss whoever's butt we need to go kiss to get on it.
Well, the commission eventually touches this document, you know, so this is the sort of the working group. And the other thing we've talked about is having some subject area expertise, some meetings where we need to focus on particular areas. And Kim, we'd probably invite you to the housing related issue, and Adam, you might be invited to discussions about transportation if we're in that arena. John Henry, infrastructure-related issues. So, I mean, we've got a great commission right now with lots of experience in different subject areas. So I think you guys will all get to touch this in more than one way. But ultimately, the plan comes to the commission. The commission has to make the recommendations to the council. And what we want is some continuity. So if there is, so that there's somebody on the commission that can talk about the process that went on, and same thing's true with the council when it gets to council. So those are the key things, I guess. But I think it's probably fair to get everybody's opinion. You know, like Sherry and Scott, and to see if they're interested as well. That's probably a good plan. I don't know if you guys
Well,
want.
that didn't solve that. Do we want to appoint it, or do we want to just turn it in? Straw poll.
I think appoint.
I'll go appoint.
Appoint.
All right.
Okay.
So I think that we want to appoint it. And if we're not going to have a meeting on August 8th, then maybe on August 22nd, we can do that, and hopefully we'll have full participation that night.
Okay.
And if not, we can put it out, and then if somebody wants to send an email in to city staff, not to everybody because that would constitute a meeting, but to city staff, then they can.
We'll ask who's
recommendation.
interested. Okay.
Sounds good.
Great. Well, that's all I have, so.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dave.
All right,
thank you
thank you.
very much for all the hard work. I know how many hours and everything that's gone into this, and it's been a great process. You had a great group of people, and you've done an excellent job. Your boss should give you a raise.
Stick
Thank
that
God.
in the evaluation.
Thank God for YouTube. Thank you.
If we were in the private sector, maybe we could do that.
Yeah, I know. All right, so I need to get myself organized here.
Can I ask a question of Denny in this? Okay. So I think also it would be helpful to know if there are other committees that will be asked for planning commissioners to join in the next year or so that we can really understand, if there are other areas that we'll be asked to volunteer and what those are and when and kind of sequencing and so
Yeah,
forth, if you have that.
Okay. Let me, I'll send that out with whatever we send to you guys.
Okay.
I don't think there are a lot, but there could be a few things out there that do come up in the next 2 years.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so now next on the agenda is the public hearing on the Logus Road subdivision. The public hearing on the Logus Road subdivision is called to order. The purpose of this hearing is to consider application number S2016-002, VR 2016-010, PLA-2016-002. The purpose of the application is to request a Logus Road subdivision on property located at 4543 Southeast Logus Road. The applicant has the burden of proving that the application is consistent with the City of Milwaukee's zoning subdivision ordinance, comprehensive plan, and any applicable municipal code provision. The applicant has the burden of proving that the proposal conforms with all of the city's applicable criteria. I now ask staff to cite the zoning ordinance sections where the criteria can be found.
Title 17, Land Division. Title 12, Streets, Sidewalks, and Public Places. Section 19.301, Low Density Residential Zones. Chapter 19.500, Supplementary Development Regulations. Chapter 19.600, Off-Street Parking and Loading. Chapter 19.700, Public Facility Improvements. Section 19.911, Variances. Section 19.1006, Type 3 Review. And Chapter 19.1200, Solar Access Protection.
All testimony and evidence must be directed toward the applicable substantive criteria. Failure to address a criterion or raise an issue with sufficient detail to allow the Planning Commission an adequate opportunity to respond to each issue precludes appeal to the City Council based on that issue. Failure to raise constitutional or other issues related to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient detail to allow response precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Any party withstanding may appeal the decision of the Planning Commission to the City Council. Persons withstanding are those who submit written comments or testify in person or sign the Planning Commission attendance sign-up sheet in the hallway. Conduct a hearing. I will recognize those persons who have completed the testimony cards. Denny, hold up a testimony card. They're right out there on the table there. and given them to me, or to Denny, he'll get them to me. When you come to the podium, please state your name and address for the record so that they may be entered into the minutes. If you are here to testify, please remember to confine your remarks to the application and the relevant criteria and to avoid repetition and irrelevant information. If additional comments or evidence are provided by any party, the Commission may, if requested, allow a continuance or leave the record open to allow the parties a reasonable opportunity to respond. Any such continuance or extension shall be subject to the limitations of the 120-day rule unless the continuance or extension is requested or agreed to by the applicant. Conflicts of interest in site visits. Does any member of the Planning Commission wish to abstain from this hearing?
No.
Does any member of the Planning Commission wish to declare an actual or potential conflict of interest?
No.
No. Does any member of the Planning Commission wish to report any ex parte contacts?
No.
No. Will any commissioner who has visited the site prior to the hearing please raise their hand? Did any of those commissioners who visited did any of those commissioners who visited the site speak to anyone at the site or note anything different from what is indicated in the staff report for this application? No. Does any member of the audience wish to challenge the participation of any member of the Planning Commission? Jurisdictional issues. Does any member of the audience wish to challenge the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission to hear this matter? Let's proceed to the staff report, please.
All right. So, hello. My name is Mary Hepperling. You've met me before. I'm the assistant planner. I've also worked with Brett Kelver, who's an associate planner on this, but I'll be presenting today. So this is for a subdivision request, as well as a variance as part of the subdivision request and a property line adjustment. And I'll go into all of that. So the location of the site is at 4543 Southeast Logus Road. It's 1.07 acre lot, so significantly large compared to some surrounding areas. It currently has a single family house on it with 2 accessory structures. It fronts Logus Road, and it's next to, you can see there's 3 similar sized lots to the east of it as well. And the rest of the lots are smaller in size that surround it. So the site is zoned R7, so low density residential. There is a small section of R3 up by 43rd and Howe Street, but it is significantly surrounded by R7 zone. So as far as the proposal goes, we have a 4-lot subdivision for this piece of property. Lot 1, which has the current single-family house and one of the accessory structures, will be proposed to be about 12,000 square feet. Lot 2, which has one accessory structure on it, will be around 7,300 square feet. Lot 3 will be 7,000 square feet, and Lot 4 will be around 8,500 square feet. And for the R7 zone, minimum lot sizes are 7,000 square feet. As part of the proposal, we do also have a couple of street connection proposals. So as part of the proposal, we have proposed to extend Melody Lane. You can see there at the top in the number 1 section. So it will be a 40-foot right-of-way street that's extended. The applicant has also provided to add extra 100 feet of the 40-foot right-of-way to make sure that there's a connection between where it ends on the west end to his property. Currently, there is no street that goes to it. We also have a 15-foot right-of-way dedication for future connection between Melody Lane and Logus Road. It's been proposed to be unimproved, so nothing will be improved until the lot to the east decides to redevelop. So right now it'll just be unimproved. There will be barriers on the south side of the extended Melody Lane to prevent car traffic. So it's not going to be like an actual road by any means. And then for sidewalks, we also have a 7-foot right-of-way dedication at the A part of the proposal is also for a property line adjustment. You can see there in the box on the top. What will happen is the property owner at 4521, which is directly to his west, will receive about 529 square feet of property. The point of that is just to make the lines a little bit simpler. You can see that proposed lot 1 would have had a small section on the west end that would have kind of created a weird lot dimension. So he's proposed to do a property line adjustment so the property to the west can take some of that. And we have variances as well. So we have 3 in total. Lot 1 is for a rear yard setback. Right now, the required setbacks for our 7 zone is 20 feet. This has a 9.51 feet rear yard setback. For lot 2, we have a side yard setback variance. Currently, it's 3 feet, and the required in our 7 zone is 10 feet. And then for lot 4, at the top, we have lot depth variance. It is being proposed to have 62.38 feet for its lot depth versus the required 80 feet in the R7 zone. So how we have gone about to review the application, we did a type 3 subdivision. We looked at the approval criteria for subdivision. Basically, does it comply with Title 19? Is it reasonable development without variances? It's not duplicative, conforms with the plats of subdivision, and they've provided applicable code sections and standards that conform with our code. A couple of the top 2 that probably are the ones that I want to highlight the most complies with Title 19. It does comply with Title 19 minus the 3 variances. So that's why there's variance requests for those, because they don't meet our standards for setbacks and lot depth. As far as allowing for reasonable development without variances, so like I said, it does require variances for those standards. And the reason why the variance is needed is because the city requires minimum lot density, right? So the minimum lot density for this particular site is 4. So the applicant would need to have lot 4 at the top there. And with where the proposed street is located, it's going to cause the applicant to have a lot depth that doesn't meet the standards. So, and that's a city requirement for us to have the road go through. That wasn't what the applicant proposed there. So it is, since it is a city requirement, it kind of goes into, well, it's going to meet minimum lot density if we have the 4th lot, even though it doesn't meet the lot depth standards. For the variances, we do have approval criteria for that as well. Basically, it talks about making sure that the variances are reasonable and appropriate, and making sure that they meet 1 or more of the following criteria, which is minimizing impacts to surrounding properties. It's a desirable public benefit, and it creatively responds to existing built or natural environment. And impacts can be mitigated to the extent practicable. So going into that, the reasons why the applicant has decided to do these variances is for a couple of different reasons. So for the rear yard setback on lot 1, which you can see as the number 1 there, moving the rear yard property line for lot 1 would actually reduce the lot area of lot 3, which is directly north of it, to be below the 7,000 square feet minimum lot density. And that would reduce the amount of lots that they could legally have, which again conflicts with the minimum lot density that we have for the site, which is 4. It also would cause, if you moved the property line north to meet that rear yard setback, it would also conflict with some of our lateral shifts requirements that we have. It can't be greater than 10%, and if we did it to meet the 20-foot rear yard setback, it would be greater than that 10% lateral shift. As far as mitigating impacts, the applicant has provided us with information saying that a majority of the activity that goes on in the backyard area is to the west side of the property, near the pool and kind of the patio area. It's not going to be where the building is on the closest to the rear yard. It also mentioned that the lot depth of Lot 3 is over 100 feet, meaning that there's plenty of room for potential buyer or whoever develops that lot to have the house be well away from the rear yard if they have issues or concerns about being closer than 20 feet, than the required 20 feet for Lot 1. For the variance 2, which is that side yard setback, which is the 3 feet right there on number 2, one of the options was to move the property line further east to meet that rear yard setback, which would be 10 feet. The problem again with that is it would reduce Lot 3's square feet. Again, it would go below the 7,000 square feet. And again, you would hit the problems with minimum density. As well as the required 15 feet of right-of-way that we've required for the applicant to designate. It limits the amount that we can move Lot 3 and shift it to the west for Lot 2 to meet those setback standards. So it also was an issue of where we were requiring dedication that kind of prevented the applicant from being able to shift some of the lots to make sure that he didn't have to have a variance for the side yard setback. And then for lot depth on the third one, or on the third bullet point, but for Lot 4, one of the options was to bend the road further south so that the lot depth for Lot 4 would meet the 80-foot requirement. Again, that's going to limit the square feet for Lots 2 and 3 to go below the 7,000 square foot minimum. And again, you're going to hit the minimum density requirement, which needs to be 4. So that was one of the reasons. Also, Lot 4 is over 8,000 square feet. So they have 130 feet of width that they can meet setbacks there. They may have to have, for development, may need a variance for the rear yard setback if they want to build a certain size house. But most likely they could fit either 15 to 20 feet for the rear yard, depending on if they wanted a variance or not for that. The house would not be built right up to the rear yard setback. And there should be room with this lot depth to be able to have at least the 25% variance, which is 15 feet, if they wanted to do that. So again, those are kind of the reasons why the applicant decided to go with these variances, why they're the best options to meet density requirements for the site, limit compound lot lines, and provide that extension for Melody Lane, which would help create development for those large lots that are to the east that I showed you before. So those are kind of the reasons that those are there, and that's how we reviewed according to our approval criteria for those variances. So going into some key issues, the key issue we thought that might be one that the Planning Commission would want to hear more about would be the street connectivity requirements, maybe why we have these requirements for the streets and what they're kind of proposed to turn into, essentially. So at the top there is the extension of Melody Lane. Again, the reasoning for the extension of Melody Lane is to provide the opportunity for development on those lots to the east. They're all going to need to provide those minimum density requirements if they want to redevelop, and they need to have street frontage improvements. So without the street going through, it would be hard to be able to fit 3 or 4 lots that will have street frontage. We also have that extra 100 feet of improved road from the west of the property. Like I said before, right now the road doesn't go all the way to the property line, which it's supposed to, and the applicant has chosen to actually build that. So 40 feet. The city would only really require 2 8-foot travel lanes, but the applicant did decide to go the full 40-foot right-of-way. So that's to reminder there. And then as far as the 15-foot width right-of-way that's going to be designated, again, it's not going to be improved at this point in time. The reason why it is 15 feet, the city would like at most a 40-foot road there. That could vary depending on how things develop on the property to the east. But the reason why it's only 15 feet is basically to adhere for where the current single-family homes are on the lot. So you can see the applicant's single-family home is pretty close already to that 15-foot right-of-way. If we went 25 feet on the applicant's lot and then 25 feet on the lot to the east, it would go into their single-family home, and the intention is to keep the single-family home that's already there. So that's where that kind of played into that. As far as another reason why we do have that connection street, Melody Lane with the extension would not meet the dead-end length requirements that we have. It would actually be farther or more than our length requirements for dead-end streets, so that would require us to make sure that we require a connector street in between. And then the reasoning why it is unimproved is due to proportionality analysis that was done by the engineering department. Essentially, they took into account all of the dedication that would be provided, including the existing road that they'll be building, as well as that 100 feet of 40-foot right-of-way. And the engineering department felt that the amount that they were putting into those things, proportionality fit better to do those requirements and improvements versus continuing the 15-foot improvement for the connector street. So they did their analysis and felt that the value of the 4,796 square feet of land dedication, the additional improvements being constructed on existing Melody Lane, deemed proportional to the effect of the 3 additional new lots. And if you need more information on how that proportionality goes on, we do have Alex Roller here in engineering who can help provide that analysis. So, we did receive some comments. We received 2 comments from the property owners that are to the east of, 2 of the property owners that are to east of the site, Don and Virginia Sites, which is on 4591 Southeast Logus Road, and Leslie Schochner, which is the 4681 Southeast Locust Road. They're both property owners for there. They both had similar concerns, so I'm summarizing them together, essentially. The number one concern was cost fairness. They wanted to make sure that the amount that they would need to provide for that connector street between Melody Lane and Locust Road would be fair between the current applicant and the needs that they would need to improve on. And then they also basically just wanted kind of clarification and were concerned as to why the connector street needed to be there in general, and that maybe it only needed to be 20 feet because it would only need to be a fire access, things like that. And then they also were concerned about negative impacts from that 15-foot right-of-way. They'd heard that it would have to be graveled and actually kind of look like a road, and so they were concerned about the possible negative impacts to the lots, specifically at 4591 Southeast Locust Road was concerned about maybe cars going through, pedestrians, things like that, where it's only just 15 feet of right-of-way. So we did respond to those comments, and you should have received a supplementary report that kind of responded to those comments. We also did receive one more comment from Leslie Schochner, which we got one from her today, and so I provided you that copy as well. And basically it talked about how we had worked with her and talked with her, and she had an understanding of this is what would be happening, and was happy with some of the outputs that we came up with. So, as stated, for the concerns that they have, we did respond to those. The reasoning that, well, the city itself would like a 40-foot, at most, a 40-foot right-of-way road between Melody and Logus Road for that connector street. It will vary. The size may vary depending on how 4591 redevelops, and the proportionality analysis will go into their redevelopment as well. So it wouldn't be required for them to pay more than the current applicant for improvements. it would be proportional to the amount of additional units that they would be adding. That's the proportionality analysis. Again, Alex can probably clarify it a little bit easier than me. But that means that their dedication could be up to 25 feet or it could be less. There is ability for that to be varied depending on easements and things that maybe that can be worked out and things like that. So essentially, the cost would be similar. It would be the same between the two. And their concern was really about, well, why are they doing only 15 and we're doing 25? And it really did depend on the proportionality, and they may not need to provide that full 25 as well. So there's that as well that would help create more of an equitable cost between the two. As well as why the connector between Logus Road and Melody Lane. As I mentioned before, it'll help with current, when the future lots to the east develop, there's potential for up to 9 new dwelling units from there. The connector street will help with the increase of dwelling units there. So in total, it will have possibly 12 units that will be in that area, new dwelling units in that area. And again, with the extension of Melody Lane, that would exceed our minimum length distance for a dead-end road. So we need to provide a connector street. And because the site that the applicant is starting to develop now, that's where we can get the connector street, is going to be right there for now. In regards to the gravel road, the city is not requiring any sort of gravel to be put in at all in the 15-foot right-of-way dedication. It should stay exactly the same as what it currently is now until the lot to the east does redevelop and the road is going to be improved or basically built. So there should be no traffic. We're going to make sure there's barriers on the extension of Melody Lane to make sure cars do not go south or east. And so it should stay exactly the same as it currently is today. So based on those approval criteria and our review, we do recommend approval for the subdivision and the property line adjustment and the variance application for the applicant Julian Ingleworth, and this will result in a 4-lot subdivision. And then we also recommend adopting the attached findings and approval criteria. So you do have 4 decision-making options. You have the ability to approve the application. You could approve the application with modified findings and conditions of approval. You could deny the application, or you could continue the hearing. So those are your 4 options. And if you have any questions, it's kind of a long one today, so.
Mary, I just have a clarification. So you said at the end 12 new residences are possible. So that's in the remaining 3 lots to the east of the...
It would be 9 in the remaining, including the subdivision. It could be up to 12. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Regarding the connector right-of-way, you said it would remain exactly as it is now. Once it becomes a right-of-way, do pedestrians have a right to connect through there, even if it's not improved for motor vehicles?
That's a good question. I'll have Alex maybe answer that one.
Alex Roller with the engineering department. That's the first that we've had that question come up. We've kind of been focusing on vehicles so far, but yes, it would be open. It wouldn't look any different, so I wouldn't imagine there'd be any more than there is right now, but it would be open to pedestrians.
So, I mean, I could understand the neighboring property owners, with their desire for privacy that has been expressed, not wanting a pedestrian connection through there. It wouldn't be an inviting pedestrian connection. I did walk along Logus up 43rd and down Melody, and it was a long, hot slog, and I was picturing folks kids trying to walk to the elementary school, and that would be a desirable place for a pedestrian connector. But it's not going to be improved or look like a pedestrian connector, but no ability to stop pedestrians going through there. It seems kind of like an unusual state that it could be in an extended period of time, and just kind of wonder what the plan or the thinking is, where there's a legal right and a need for a connection, but some valid reasons why that connection is not desirable to the people who are going to be fronting on it, and maybe a more structured solution would be better than just putting this into kind of a limbo state.
Structured as in?
Like some agreement or plan or accommodation for pedestrians, or if it really is a technically legal right but undesirable from the adjacent property owner's perspective. You know, I guess I just struggle to think that we can just leave it like that, where the pedestrians could walk through but nobody would want them to, and probably shun them from doing so just through plantings or it just feels like a limbo state for that right-of-way for perhaps decades.
Yeah, you're right. I think with how far we can get with the proportionality, like Mary said, we only have 3 new dwelling units, and there's 260 feet of fully improved road being built. That's kind of as far as we can get with what we can ask the applicant to build.
Well, I've seen places in the Ardenwald neighborhood where there are pedestrian through access on the right-of-ways that are fenced in, and I find it, I appreciate the proportionality analysis and the need for that, but I don't think it's something that anyone could argue is dialed into the nearest penny or the nearest $100, that there's room for interpretation here. I saw the request for a fence along the property to the east, and I wonder if there would be an opportunity for a structured solution that would involve building some sort of privacy fence and having a more official pedestrian access, and if that's something that we could require that the city has an opinion on, and also what the adjacent property owners would think about allowing a more structured pedestrian access.
I'd say short of really, improving some kind of pathway of, so it seems more inviting. I don't know if there's any stance that we would take either way. The fencing, I guess could help. It might. I guess it's no different than these properties that are already developing, although it is a new impact, the 3 new houses. Potentially you could, that was one of the requests, was fencing. That could be a requirement. Yeah, I know that the Mission Park is going to put fencing at the south end, the one off of King.
I'm not sure where this fencing, what fencing you would require and at what location. Is it fencing both sides of this pedestrian way? Is it fencing one? Is it fencing
I don't know what sort of standards there might be for a pedestrian way. If there were a pedestrian way, I think something like lighting and safety issues should be addressed.
That's not what we were proposing as part of the improvements here, partly because the determination was that we had required Melody Lane to be improved, and we'd required the other frontage dedications, so that we had essentially required all the frontages that we could. Whether there is a justification for that additional improvement, I think, is kind of up in the air, and we could explore that further. The one thing I was going to say, though, is that there would be the possibility to prevent access if we used reserve strips. The reserve strips are something that prevent vehicular access. I think you could also use a reserve strip to probably prevent pedestrian access across through this area if we really wanted to take that approach. And then the city would put up a sign that would say basically no pedestrian access. So there's a way to restrict that access, but I'm not sure that we really want to encourage the access. I
feel like either restricting it or encouraging it would be better than limbo. I guess that's not a question, but
we can talk about that during deliberation.
Yeah. That's a good point. And I mean, if you want us to explore that further, I might, one option would be to continue the hearing and explore it more, or maybe pause the hearing, allow us to confer with the developer or the owner. There might be a couple other approaches.
I also had some questions on the setback variances, where the justification for those is the minimum density and minimum lot size requirements. Is it more onerous to have smaller lot size variance than it would be to have these changes that are in front of us now? Like, can we go to a 6,800 square foot lot and not need the setback variance? And
Right. Well, also to consider the setback variances for the Lot 2, which is the west lot, it has the accessory structure on it. So either what will happen with that accessory structure is it will be bought with an adjoining property, so either to the south or to the west. And so it would be a part of kind of a larger lot itself, and then the setback requirement kind of wouldn't, it would still be there, but it would be kind of associated with a larger lot, so it wouldn't have issues with the surrounding properties, essentially. Or if it is sold by itself, the accessory structure needs to be demolished, and that's in the conditions of approval. And then the setback issue, there's nothing there for that side yard one.
so the setback issue from the accessory structure is considered to be sort of a temporary issue that would resolve itself, and that's built in.
Okay, so that variance then goes away once that building is demolished or that lot is sold to an individual?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Then on the 15-foot right-of-way designation for the connector street, knowing that a 40-foot street is a potential outcome for that connector one day, is it within the city's power to take 20 feet or to require 20 feet now, even if the existing single-family structure encroaches into the new right-of-way? Is there an option to take the full 20 feet from the applicant with the encroachment, knowing that if that ever redevelops, that would have an appropriate setback?
Yeah.
I think the approach we took for the 15-foot size was kind of two parts. One of them was the location of the houses. The development property of the house was a lot closer to their east property line than the property to the east to their west property line. Second component was also the width of the frontage on Logus. That small corner property has been kind of subdivided out, so there's a narrower frontage. So that was a component as well. We didn't want to have them dedicate 20 feet and then be only left with 30 or whatever the distance is. So that was the reason that we did come up with that value.
Would it be an option did you consider maybe a full 20-foot designation up until the point where the encroachment, where the lot narrows, where you could have a proper 20-foot designated right-of-way for the wide part of the site, and then a 15-foot where it narrows?
We did not look into that. Generally, we try to get clean right-of-ways when we have development, because it's a little harder to get later for these little piecemeal approaches. We did understand at the time too, though, the street that's going to be put in that north-south connector is going to be substandard. It's going to have sidewalk on one side like Melody does, so that we knew at best we would get 40 feet, but we didn't need to have that full 40. And we do what the code does allow for stormwater to be on easements or sidewalk to be an easement, so even the cross-section will look the same even without that full 40-foot right-of-way.
Okay. I'm done.
Where is Melody Lane supposed to go? I see it can't connect to 40.
Yeah, 48.
48. It can't, right? Or unless a variance was granted and somebody was allowed to build their house in the right-of-way. So where is Melody Lane supposed to? Can Melody Lane extend all the way down to the edge of 4681 and then that connector street be put there? Does there have to be a connector street if both 4591 the other address and the 4681 all develop together? Can't you put your connector street anywhere you want?
You could. The push for us, from what our understanding is, I don't know the name of that subdivision, the Melody Lane subdivision, they built 400 feet of road and then didn't build the rest because that was their way to get out of the dead end requirement of not being longer than 400 feet. So they still have the right of way there, but they did not build any road further to stay under that distance. So any other property to the east developing after that without providing a connection would need a variance. For every single lot would be variance, 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 because you're now above that 400-foot dead end.
Got it. Okay. All right. And forgive my ignorance, but lot 2, 3, and 4 end up with Melody Lane addresses, correct?
Correct.
There's no flag lot, or because I noticed that it's Flag Lot City back there.
Yeah. No, there would be no flag lot.
Okay.
I mean, the alternative to this subdivision is some sort of flag lot situation. And we're trying to avoid that to the extent we can.
Okay. Any other questions for staff? Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
I'm just waiting for Mary to be able to get to her mic. Have we received any correspondence on this matter other than those items included in the meeting packet?
No.
Applicant testimony. Is the applicant here? And just a reminder, state your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, I'm Julian Illingworth. My home address is 6334 North Curtis Ave, Portland, Oregon. So I don't have any specific additional presentation. Mary did a great job explaining, and this was a lot clearer than I would have been able to do myself on any kind of presentation. I did just want to address a couple of the specific points that you guys raised already. John, with the increased right-of-way, if we had a 20-foot right-of-way in the fatter area of the lot, that would have, that lot is only 70 in square foot, so that would have definitely put us below that that threshold. And obviously, with the variances and the specifics of the property and the surrounding properties, we spent a lot of time messing around with stuff and figuring stuff out and trying our best to meet that floor density, and this was the only way we could do it, pretty much, especially with the 15-foot right-of-way on that east side. That really limited us with our options, and obviously having to build Melody Lane across takes up a lot of the sort of square footage, a lot of our kind of wiggle room with stuff. The only other point that was with the variance on the utility structure on lot 2 that has 3 feet on that side, it's our plan is to have that only tied to lot 3, which is directly next to it, so it couldn't be sold with the parent lot, because the utility structure actually has all of its doors, big cargo doors that are on that side. So if you had that, if you owned that one and you didn't own lot 3 right next to it, you couldn't get anything in and out. You'd have to get new doors on the other side. It would just it'd be more trouble than it's worth. So those will be sold either together or the utility structure will be dismantled. I'd rather not do that because it's quite substantial and it would be costly. So my plan is to sell it to somebody who has some utility for it and doesn't have to. I mean, it would sort of be a shame to have to rip it down. Yeah, I look forward to. I assume there's lots of testimony, so I'll be quick, and I look forward to answering any other questions you guys have or specific queries or anything like that. So if you have anything for me now or at the end, whatever.
Mr. Illingsworth, would you object to on the, so here for everybody, I am east, west, north, south, directionally challenged. So on the right-hand side of Lot 3, and on your neighbor to 4591, in between that two 15-foot right-of-way from Melody Lane going to Logus Road, would you be against putting a natural or a man-made barrier to allow pedestrian access through that right-of-way?
Excuse me,
I'm sorry.
A barrier to allow
Yeah, a barrier.
access?
Row of hedges, a fence.
To not allow access.
No, to allow pedestrian access from Melody Lane down to Logus Road.
So like a tunnel, kind of like a walkway. That's,
You put some hedges on one side of the property, one side of the right of way, and you put some hedges on the other side of the right of way. So then that way you create a natural walking path, and because you have this 15 feet of right of way that you can't put anything on anyways.
I would rather put. I was actually looking through when Denny made the point on the reserve strip. I was kind of looking through to. I think that's a better option to limit pedestrian access through there.
To not allow any pedestrian access?
Encourage it.
Okay.
Because I think that would, I think the neighbors' main, they don't want people walking through the back there. It's they've got an open property in the back. I know the people who are going to live in those houses on my plot would rather not have people walking back there as well. I think it makes more sense the plan was to have a barrier for the cars. I think it makes more sense to make it impassable or difficult to be passable for pedestrians and potentially put a reserve strip so that it's technically illegal to pass through there, or, make it so people can't just do it if they're told not to do it.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thanks.
Denny, did you get any cards on this matter?
I did not. So,
last chance for anybody here that's for Logus Road that wants to speak or testify. Okay. Questions from Planning Commission. Does any member of the Planning Commission have any questions regarding the testimony to this point?
No.
I'm assuming the applicant doesn't have any rebuttal to the testimony so far? Closure of public hearing. I try to be so good about keeping the paperwork organized. The public testimony portion of this hearing on the Logus Road subdivision is now closed. Is the commission ready for discussion?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Travis.
Okay. If you're okay starting.
I think it was really well explained why the variances are needed, and so it seems like a lot, really, when in the code it says 10 feet, but it's only 3 feet. But in the explanation and kind of the justification for it, it helped me to understand why it's needed, and that it's really it's not really a viable site to develop without all of these circumstances in place. So it was a great presentation by staff and helpful to hear the testimony to understand the full picture. So I don't have any issues or concerns at this point.
I'd concur with Commissioner Travis. I feel like the reasoning behind the variances and putting it together as the best case for approval of this site with those conditions, it was strong enough for me that I don't have reservations on that score.
Commissioner Burns?
Yeah, the variances that are requested seem reasonable, and it seems like a good and appropriate site to develop as presented. on the right-of-way, I was looking into the vision statement, and I'm finding myself actually feeling strongly that if we're going to have right-of-way, that I know that it needs to be done hopefully in a way that minimizes the impacts on the 4591 property. But there's an action in the vision action plan about building connectivity for pedestrians, and I think now the opportunities like this are when we should be doing it and encouraging it and not discouraging it. And I'm finding myself feeling strongly about that. Logus Road is one of the best streets in Milwaukee to walk down, I found. I walked from the elementary school with a stroller and an infant in it to Logus, and it's fantastic for about 2/3 of it, and then all the connectivity disappears. And it was pretty bad walking down Logus up 43rd, and it's a direct route to an elementary school. I think it's pretty apparent to me that this is a part of Milwaukee's vision to encourage connectivity and not discourage connectivity, and there's going to be right-of-way. So if anyone agrees with me, I'd like to find a way to explore this option.
So I would like you to make a suggestion on what you would say as a condition of approval to allow that connectivity.
That the dedicated right-of-way be improved to ADA accessibility for pedestrians, and that a reasonable screen would be installed to protect the privacy of the adjacent property owner at 4591.
I will agree with the appropriate screen, but I don't know if you really need to put in a big old path to make it ADA compliant.
I mean, I think the ADA compliance standards are a strip of asphalt. I mean, we even have seen examples like Spring Garden Park of packed granite type surfaces.
Right, but
accessible.
But the idea is that turns into a road if 4591 develops. And it has to turn into a road if 4591 develops.
So it would admittedly be an interim solution, but in cases like this, I think interim could mean 5, 10, 20, 50 years.
Well, yeah.
You know, I have no idea whether 4591 is likely or unlikely to develop by 2040, the time of our vision action plan, but our ability to influence this is now.
Commissioner Burns, I appreciate where you're going with this, and I think that it's worthy of exploration. I'm not sure, what is within our parameters and what's allowable to suggest or to explore. So, but I think I like where you're going with it, and I do think it makes sense to be consistent with the other guiding documents that we're working from as a city.
Do you want it ADA approved?
If it needs to be, I don't know. That's part of the legal. I don't.
No. We can put any condition of approval on this. So we can actually say the right of way until further developed be used as an ADA, correct?
Yes.
And so if we have two commissioners that are on board with the ADA, I just think that there should be screening on both sides of the property. You see it all the time, and they're just a grass strip, and some people will use it, some people won't. I want to be respected to the two people's property. I don't know if it's worth the expense in the long run to have somebody put in an ADA access. But if we have two commissioners that are on board with it, or if we have three commissioners, I want to hear that now so that we can give the city and the applicant some time maybe to quickly discuss it.
I think what I would really like it to be continued if we were going to have to talk about this, because there's some other issues that we need to explore related to the proportionality analysis that engineering already did, what latitude we have to require any additional improvements,
Right, but tonight we could put a condition that you either put a man-made or a natural screen on both sides of the property, correct?
Well, you could suggest it and ask the staff to explore that further.
And then continue
the hearing, yes.
Okay.
Is this where we make a motion to continue?
And then,
We'd have to.
and what I would suggest if you do that is you continue the hearing, but not necessarily open, well, you could open the hearing about that particular issue only.
Okay.
So you're saying the option is a condition with an understanding that the option is to make a motion to continue with
only with regards to the right of way and pedestrian access.
that our decision making at a later time.
And I would like to check one more thing before we continue, and that is, do you guys know where we are within the 120-day rule requirement for this?
I think we're close. I think I saw some, I think I have something. I almost think it was in August. Let me double check. Oh no, 120 days, September 28th, 2017.
Okay. So we need to have.
I don't feel super strongly about I mean, the ADA component seems like the way things are done, but if we were able to attach a finding to provide a screened pedestrian access and we could just add that finding today, that's something I could move forward with.
A screened pedestrian access. So you're saying it wouldn't necessarily be ADA?
I guess I would look to the city to advise on whether it would need to be ADA compliant. I think we talk a lot about ADA compliant access.
I'm not sure we would call it access.
Well, I think that's what I'm asking for is.
If we're gonna designate it as a pedestrian access, I think we would want it to be.
You'd have to.
ADA
compliant. And I mean, that's specifically what I'm asking for, is a 15-foot right-of-way is wide enough for pedestrian access. And
if we're making it available for pedestrians to use without improvement, and if somebody uses it, that's fine, they use it. That's different than trying to improve it as something.
Yeah, it seems to me that if we're going to designate it as pedestrian access, we would want to, do some kind of analysis around connectivity and so forth, that we just don't have that readily, at this point, right? I mean,
connectivity and where the trail goes to or from.
Right, yeah, just.
Melody has great sidewalks. It's a nice street to walk down.
Alex just pointed out that the southern portion there where it approaches Logus, that's the driveway for the house. So.
Oh, and the driveway is in the right of way?
This is actually much more complicated than.
Is the driveway in the right of way?
Yes.
Yeah.
He doesn't access from Logus.
I'd be curious how this compares to some of the sites I've walked down in Ardenwald, where there's a fenced-in pedestrian kind of tunnel trail that dumps out onto someone's driveway, and I always felt a little sorry for the person whose driveway that is, but it's a clear little walking route to Ardenwald Elementary, and so this would be similar to that. I mean, it's clearly a burden to the property there, but it's also not without precedent in Milwaukee.
Possibly, though, that's before ADA standard.
Sure.
So, I mean, we've kind of flip-flopped back and forth.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Let's start over again. We're going to take a straw. Commissioner Burns, do you feel that that it needs to be designated as a pedestrian right-of-way with ADA access?
I feel like that's yes.
Commissioner Argo, do you feel that it needs to be marked as a pedestrian right-of-way with ADA access? Or explore the idea? I'll let you think on it. Commissioner Travis?
Think about that for a
I
second.
think I'm in the same place as Commissioner Argo with not really sure.
So my view is that what I would suggest is you put the vehicle barrier there, and that you either do a man-made or a natural barrier on both sides of the property line up to the driveway. And then you just leave it that way. And if people walk on it, people walk on it. The other option is that we put up a sign that says no walking. The applicant and the city, I think, would prefer a sign that says no walking. Commissioner Burns, I think, makes a very compelling case that we are about connectivity and that there is a great logical connection there, and that right-of-way could be used for something better than just empty space. You do have the problem with the driveway. I really think that it is a huge waste amount of time, resources, and energy, and all sorts of bad things to create a path there. That's just going to get torn up. It's not even part of our walkability comprehensive plan. It's not even the TSP. It's not, you know.
Right. I'm weighing
all sorts of complications with it.
I would weigh too that to put a condition of such a path where we're about to enter in a comprehensive plan process that may have us involved in formulating strategic approaches to designating priorities for connections that are done appropriately to ADA and to city standards of safety. I don't see an interim solution of building a path as appropriate to this application as a condition. That's just my take. I'm leaning to accept with conditions as proposed from staff.
So no pedestrian access?
No, because I would not be comfortable with a de facto, or I'm trying to think from the city's angle of say, a condition that you put in hedgerows, but it's not ADA compliant. The city's liable if anything happens there because it'll be public right-of-way. So I tend to think more on where they may be coming from on what's the best way to have a pedestrian connection built here. And I would say that's
and the answer is not to have one.
Well, the answer is when they're ready to develop a cross-section to make the connection.
Okay. I like Commissioner Argo's argument. I will go with that argument. If you two feel strongly that we need to continue this and have it as a as an option to be looked at for full pedestrian access, we'd call it full pedestrian access, whatever that means, then we continue the hearing.
When there's four of us to make a quorum, does it have to be a unanimous decision to move forward?
I'm going.
The majority of the quorum who can decide. No.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to I'm going to allow the continuance to have the majority rule if it's a tie.
So, I mean, I do feel strongly about this as a person who frequently walks in Milwaukee and frequently walks with small children, and this was a pretty crappy place for me to choose to walk yesterday, and I'd like this to not be a pretty crappy place for the future residents and the existing residents to walk. So I do feel strongly about it, but I'm not going to hold up the hearing if I'm outnumbered.
Well, as a former Safe Routes to School person and Public Safety Advisory Committee member, I am with you in terms of the walkability and the need for pedestrians to be able to get around the city. So I just don't. I guess without thinking, without knowing long-term how it'll play out, but I also don't want to miss an opportunity here if this is a great place to really push that connectivity.
Okay, so I would like to make a suggestion that we continue the hearing specific to a pedestrian access from what would be the end of Melody Lane down the 15-foot right-of-way.
Okay.
And whatever pedestrian access means in terms of city code.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's reasonable.
And just reopen the hearing only for that. Do we need to allow public testimony towards that?
You can, but you can also simply leave the record open for written comment.
Okay, do I have to close?
You have to announce what you're doing. So
okay.
If you're allowing written comment, let people know. If you are continuing the matter to allow additional testimony, let people know. One complication here is that if the staff comes back after consulting with the applicant with some other option that hasn't been discussed previously, at that point you're going to have to allow testimony anyway.
All right, so we just might as well just let the public, only to this matter.
Yeah, we can restrict it to this matter.
Okay, so I will entertain a motion.
This is on me.
Right, continue the hearing.
So I make a motion to continue the hearing to focus on the issue of pedestrian access from the extended Melody Lane through the connector to Southeast Logus Rd that will be open to public testimony.
On August 22nd.
Till August 22nd.
I second that motion.
All right, so moved by Commissioner Burns, seconded by Commissioner Travis. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, continued to August 22nd. And that was the easy one.
Could we have like a 3-minute break?
How about we take a 6-minute break? I bet you Commissioner Travis would appreciate that. And yeah, meet back here at 8:20. we go. Welcome everybody back. The public hearing on file number PD 2017-001 is now reopened and called to order. The purpose of this hearing is to consider Rusk Road planned development. Conduct a hearing. I will recognize those persons who have completed a yellow testimony card and submitted one to staff. When you come to the podium, please state your name and address for the record. The Planning Commission will make a recommendation to Council regarding whether the proposal conforms with all of the city's applicable criteria. Just to let everybody know, how many testimony cards do we got there, Denny?
I've got 3 so far.
All right. I will now, are you ready, Brett?
Yes.
I'll wait for you. Sorry, I jumped the gun, everybody. I will now ask staff to cite the zoning ordinance section or sections where the criteria can be found.
All right. Milwaukee Municipal Code Sections 19.1007 Type 4 Review, 19.311 Planned Development Zone, 19.301 Low Density Residential Zones, including the R10 Zone, 19.302 Medium and High Density Residential Zones, including the R3 Zone, Section 19.902 Amendments to Maps and Ordinances, Title 17, Land Division, Title 18, Flood Hazard Regulations, Section 19.402, Natural Resources, Chapter 19.500, Supplementary Development Regulations, Chapter 19.600, Off-Street Parking and Loading, Chapter 19.700, Public Facility Improvements, Title 12, Streets, Sidewalks, and Public Places, Chapter 13.14, Stormwater Management, Section 19.904, Community Service Uses, Section 19.911, Variances, and Chapter 19.1200, Solar Access Protection.
All testimony and evidence must be directed toward the applicable substantive criteria. If you are here to testify, please remember to confine your remarks to the application and the relevant criteria, and to avoid repetition and irrelevant information. Commissioner participation. Does any member of the Planning Commission wish to declare an actual or potential conflict of interest?
No.
I have a potential conflict of interest as when I worked at Milwaukee Lumber, I used to sell material to Brownstone. That has been 5 years ago, and it will not, it has not wavered me either way on this decision. Does any member of the Planning Commission wish to abstain? No.
No.
Does any member of the Planning Commission wish to report any ex parte contacts?
No.
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 Yes. So when I went to go see the site, there was a guy from Clackamas Water, and I did not get his name, who asked me about the site and whether it was developable or not for business. Does anyone have any rebuttal to the ex parte contacts declared by the commissioners? Let's proceed to the staff report presentation, please.
All right, good evening, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. I'm Brett Kelver, Associate Planner with the city, your planning shepherd through this process. I'm going to try to be as brief but to the point as I can on this presentation. I want to help quickly reset the stage since it's been 2 months since we had our last episode, but I do want to get to the applicant's presentation and allow time for testimony and as much time as possible for you to deliberate and discuss this issue. So I'll try to be brief, but if you do have questions along the way, I'll entertain them, however you want to do that. So our last, we had 2 hearings, May 23rd, and again later that week, May 25th. At that At the last hearing, you finished the public testimony portion. You had a little opportunity to talk about some of the issues, and you requested of staff and the applicant certain pieces of information or updates related to the revised site plan that was presented. You wanted to talk a little bit more and know about the open space tract and how it might be managed or owned. There was considerable testimony and discussion about the preservation of the white oak trees in the southwest corner of the site. There was a lot of discussion about floodplain issues and questions about that. And then also traffic was a big concern. So we tried to address some of those issues in the staff report, and I'll hit on some of those as well briefly in my presentation. I think the applicant probably has some more information and perspective on those as well. The direction from the Planning Commission at the last hearing was to move forward considering the revised site plan that was put forward by the applicant that shifted the development away from the southwestern corner a little bit to allow more of an opportunity to preserve the trees that were there. It did propose at the time maintaining the 92 unit number that was originally proposed. It reconfigured the street setup a little bit. Originally we started with 2 access points from the new development onto Kellogg Creek Drive. With the revised proposal, we moved to a single street access with, let me see if I get my cursor activated, with a fire and emergency access way, more or less in the location of the old original street proposal. So just a couple of quick observations from staff. One that we noted in the staff report. Pros and cons of the new site plan. There were some benefits to having a second official street access onto Kellogg Creek Drive in terms of, one of the variances that changed was now a variance is being requested to allow more than 20 units to be served by a closed-in street system. So we moved away from, there was a particular driveway spacing variance that went away with this, but we moved into another variance issue. There are some things to consider about internal circulation, how a second street might affect that. Also, we were just wondering a little bit about questions and potential for cut-through traffic through this church parking lot to access some of the units. Another thing that we were looking at was with the amount of fill that will be brought into the site to develop it as proposed, there are several retaining wall locations, and one thing that hadn't been discussed before that we started thinking about a little bit was the nature of those walls. They'll be I'm not sure exactly how high, but there was some thinking that it might fit into some of the outstanding aspects of the design. If one were to consider a little bit learn a little bit more about what the detail of those walls might be, is there an opportunity for some landscaping, screening, or something like that? So there's a little bit of a buffer between that and the open space tract. With respect to the ownership and management of the open space tract, we identified there are 2 basic options. One, I think what was originally proposed was a homeowners association that would oversee, manage, maintain the open space tract. You heard some testimony about concerns and questions about that. I think what we discussed on the staff end, we did explore whether the city would be interested in taking ownership of that. We also talked with the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District. They're also interested and willing in taking ownership. I think the city's preference, which we expressed in the staff report, was that if it were to be donated to the public, that the city would prefer to own it, and that we would adjust our intergovernmental agreement with NCPRD to have them manage it. If not, and the way we presented this in the conditions that were revised was we want to make really sure that if it's homeowners association that is maintaining possession and overseeing the management of that, we want to establish some kind of a very clear long-term maintenance plan for that so that we get beyond the simple 2-year plant survival portion of things, and so that there's an opportunity for some coordination at least with NCPRD about how that site might be managed. With respect to the oak trees in the southwest portion of the site, shifting the lots further to, I think it was maybe 40 or 45 feet to the east, as illustrated in this drawing, does preserve all of the white oak trees for sure on the property. You can see the ones that are proposed for being removed with the excess in this area are either Schoolers willows or English hawthorn. So all of the white oaks in this area would be preserved. A little more detail. Well, this is also showing the dashed lines are the estimated tree canopy for those. So there's a portion I think where one or 2 trees were leaning towards the development, and that's affecting a little bit the canopy line there. seemed that the bigger question was what would happen to the oak trees that would come into the newly dedicated public right-of-way. The original requirements by the city would have, we were looking for a little bit of expanded pavement with a bike lane, curb, landscape strip, sidewalk, and by that point we're getting pretty well into needing to remove all of those trees. So in the interim, what we did was we looked at some alternatives. We had an on-site meeting. There were a couple of creative suggestions, and what the city engineering director and department decided would be acceptable would be to not have a separate sidewalk, whether as per the standard cross-section, or I think there was an idea about having a sidewalk meander through the open space tract, but that we could work with a crossing to the existing south side sidewalk. So essentially what would happen would be we would still want to keep the bike lane. It would remain kind of even with the street, as a typical bike lane, but we would cross pedestrians over, and essentially where the existing sidewalk is, the back edge of the existing sidewalk would also be the sidewalk would be replaced by asphalt and a bike lane and curb. But essentially there'd be no further encroachment towards the trees with respect to the improvements themselves. There would be some concern and question about there's a little bit of excavation that's going to be needed, and so one of the proposed conditions was related to what the applicant's arborist had suggested was doing some kind of assessment of what kind of roots are you running into, and are there things you can do to mitigate damage to the tree roots in that area. With respect to the floodplain questions, this illustration shows the applicant's initial presentation of the understanding of where the floodplain areas were, looking more at the FEMA maps and the topographical information the applicant had for the site. They revised that, kind of identifying or relating to two different flood elevation areas. So the area along Kellogg Creek has one particular flood elevation, and then the area closer to the wetland, which has a little bit different drainage course, had a separate flood elevation. And the applicant may be able to talk a little bit more about that, or if there are questions about that, we can maybe have our engineering department discuss it a little bit. But what this drawing represents is an understanding that there may be a little bit less floodplain that would be impacted. That is officially, recognized by FEMA. Now, there's this part of the discussion is still a little premature and preliminary. Normally, a more detailed engineered assessment of the floodplain and what the applicant needs to do about it would come a little bit later in the process. And so our suspicion is that the actual floodplain that needs to be dealt with may be somewhere in between these two representations. So there's just a little more detail and information that would be needed to know about that. But I think the things I wanted to say about this are, absent any other review, if we were just talking about an applicant wanting to fill in the floodplain, so forget about natural resources if you can separate them for a second, there is a process for being able to do that. It takes survey work, there's a review process for it, but you can fill in the floodplain. There are requirements about what you have to do when you do that. You have to balance the cut with the fill so you end up with a zero net change. So it's not something that people usually volunteer to do, because for the average homeowner it ends up being a lot of process, a lot of cost to do that. But all that to say, someone who didn't need any other land use approvals could go out on the site and legally work with the city to do cut and fill in the floodplain on this site. So there were, obviously it is connected to the natural resources and to the general function of the site. But in terms of trying to clarify the floodplain issue, I think if you still have concerns about that or want to talk about that, I guess staff's suggestion is that you can think about how that links up with impacts to the natural resource areas. So what engineering staff has concluded is, based on the information we've seen so far, the size of the site and what we understand about the site, there is adequate room on the site to do the balancing of cut and fill that's needed if you're going to mess with the floodplain. Okay. How you do that and where you do that may impact where you're disturbing additional natural resources, and that you do have a review process for, and there are other requirements for. So I guess I'll leave that there. You may also think about, in the concept of the plan development itself, and the request for a density bonus involves these ideas of outstanding design, extraordinary amenities. You may try to find a link between this general concern about floodplain and floodplain impacts and tie that to, I guess, your consideration or evaluation of the request for a density bonus or something like that. But I guess I just want to kind of separate a little bit. There are some technical issues with floodplain development. There are other ways to connect it to this general request as well. With the revised site plan, the applicant did provide a revised natural resource report to show kind of the adjustments in the particular areas of the habitat conservation area and the water quality resource and wetland that would be affected, and they adjusted their disturbance figures accordingly. They've also, I don't think there's been a great change in terms of the general concept, but they've also kind of updated their map of where their mitigation plantings would go, where they'd be doing debris and noxious material inventory and removal, where they'd be doing plantings. They've indicated a couple of additional enhancement areas where they'd install plantings. With respect to traffic, there was a request that updated counts be provided and that they be done before school was finished for the year on a day when school was fully in session. And so those counts happened on a Thursday, June 1st, 2017. And the long and short of it is the conclusion was that, yes, there were some additional trips that happened. What the graphics that I'm showing you here on the left-hand side are the counts at the Rusk Road Highway 224 intersection, showing the different turning movements. The left-hand side is the June updated figures. The right-hand side is the November 2016 figures. So the numbers were a little bit higher, but in terms of both the applicant's consultant and our consultant DKS's review, the conclusion was even with the revised figures, it didn't indicate that there was any failure of the intersection of this one or any other ones. With that said, the revised numbers also didn't cause the city to reconsider its suggestion or requirement that we get an improved right-hand turn lane on Rusk Road at Highway 224, which I think at least ODOT and the city's consultant have agreed would improve traffic conditions there. And I think the applicant may have more information they can share about the traffic piece of it. One of the questions you had was about what is the situation with the existing right-of-way we have at Rusk Road. Is there room for an expanded right-hand turn lane? Would we have to acquire property? And so again, this graphic, this faint yellow line here is showing, you know, within a margin of 1 or 2 feet, probably the existing property line here. So you can tell, for example, this property, they have a fence that's out in the right-of-way. They have what probably feels like a larger yard than is actually their property, but all this illustrates that there is definitely sufficient room for the city without having to purchase additional property. We have right-of-way that can be improved to establish a formal right-hand turn lane here. So in summary, this is the revised proposal graphic. Essentially, most things are the same in terms of the number of units, some of the amenities and features that were being provided with respect to the open space, how stormwater is being dealt with. The variances have changed a little bit. There's a slightly lower number of lots that are needing that variance for not having any buildable area outside of a water quality resource area, HCA. As I noted, the driveway spacing variance went away and was replaced with the one related to the closed loop system. One significant change was preservation of all the white oak trees, but just as a synopsis of essentially what's being proposed there. A quick recap of the baseline criteria that you're to look at in terms of considering the plan development itself are these, you know, how does it fit in with the comprehensive plan? How is it, you know, cohesively? Does it provide public benefits? What are its negative impacts on other properties? The question about the requested density bonus is a little bit separate one. It's one that gets at what we've been saying before, outstanding design, extraordinary amenities. So just to keep those two pieces a little bit separate. And then just a recap on some of the conditions that from the findings and conditions that were presented to you in May to the ones that were in your packet and the supplemental packet. Essentially the highlights were a focus on a condition that looked at trying to get dedication of the open space tract to the city or NCPRD, or if not, like I mentioned before, making sure that an HOA would have a pretty clear long-term management maintenance plan for that site. Also, there's a specific condition in there related to the white oak trees, the roots, exploring and protecting them for the right-of-way improvements. And then the one I just mentioned that we came up kind of since the staff report went out, which is related to the retaining walls and just trying to get some aesthetic design and landscaping for them. The couple of outstanding questions we had for you were things that we thought might be a basis of some discussion for you. Get back to one, the question of the requested density bonus and your consideration of how you weigh or rate the outstanding or extraordinary features of the development. Number of units, weighing that with some of the questions and concerns that have come up about traffic, about floodplain impacts, about natural resource impacts. As well, specifically with respect to the natural resource area, do you feel, because that is a key component of this, there is a natural resource review, do you feel that the applicant has demonstrated that they've done as much as possible to avoid or minimize impacts to the water quality resource area and the habitat conservation area in terms of trying to balance whatever other goals you think are important there? And then specifically with respect to the request for the variance for the closed loop street system, do you feel that that's a reasonable request and that they've met that? So with that in mind, I'd ask if you have any questions for me or for engineering staff right now or later.
None right now.
I have some. Alex, you may want to come up here. So could you just flip to a slide that has either the plan on it or whatever's easy? There you go. That's good. So there's a rule, right, that you can't have a street, what is it, 75 feet from each other? What's the difference from the street to street? What's the... I guess my question is that where would the city propose the second access to come in from at the...
Our suggestion or consideration was basically, widening this. I think it's currently 20 pros as a 22-foot wide access widening right here. And my understanding is that that would still meet our minimum spacing standards for streets.
And does that mean that they need to put in the sidewalk and everything like that? Or is the city just making a suggestion as a, like an access or an alley or something like that?
Well, from our understanding, they'd be basically adding 20 feet to it. That's the width of the one of the internal units, not the external, because just allowed the side yard setback. And that'd be a 42-foot right-of-way, which we would require the sidewalk, and then it'd be 2 11-foot travel lanes. So it'd have sidewalk, planter, and then no parking, basically, would be the difference.
All right.
So the suggestion is, as is right now, it's proposed a 22-foot wide thing. It would not look like a street. It would be grasscrete or something like that that would not invite regular vehicle traffic to come down. It would be accessible for pedestrians and for emergency service vehicles. If it moved to become a formal street, it would look like a formal street with, as Alex mentioned, some street improvements.
And would there be a crosswalk or anything there to get you over to the other side, or?
There would be. It'd look very similar to the main entrance right now.
Okay.
If it was wider.
Okay. And then, Brett, is there an IGA written or guaranteed that if the applicant decides to donate the land to the city of Milwaukee, that they will take it?
Well, if you're asking, would the city accept the land if donated? I don't know if an IGA is the correct term that we would use. But I think we've talked to the city manager, and she's confirmed that the city would be willing to take that on. The IGA we would deal with would be with NCPRD
and the city
to pull it into the.
We have an IGA with NCPRD about
maintaining
all of our
the land.
parkland.
So it is guaranteed that if tonight that the applicant says yes, we'll donate it, and we find that amount to be a density bonus, that it is guaranteed that the city will take that property.
Well, it would basically be up to the city council, but from city administration, in our review with the city manager, we would prefer that it be dedicated to the city than dedicated to NCPRD.
So could you explain to me what would happen if we said that was a benefit to having the extra density, but we did not see that the homeowner association was a benefit to the property, and then the city rejects it?
Well, the city council is going to be the final decision maker on this. So what you would be doing is, if you decide to move forward in that way, your recommendation would be that that a condition of approval or a part of the proposal, however you want to to put it, would be that the open space tract would be dedicated to the city, and then when the city council considers it and looks at your recommendation and thinks about it and discusses it, they would either decide, yes, we want to do that, or no, we don't, and we'll go back a little bit to figuring out how to either make another arrangement with NCPRD.
But city council approving that doesn't necessarily make it a guarantee, does it?
Well, you don't, at this point, as a decision maker, have the ability to have guarantees on things that could be decided by a different decision maker.
All right.
So what you can do is suggest a condition, and if that condition can't be satisfied, then it would be clear that your recommendation would be different.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions?
Does NCPRD or the City of Milwaukee own the existing North Clackamas Park?
North Clackamas Park is composed of a couple of different tax lots, and the city owns a couple of them, and NCPRD owns a couple of them.
The city owns the majority of the land by far.
So it would be consistent for the city to take this tract with the existing management structure of the larger park. And if we could, just want to clarify that we could write a finding such that if for some reason city council chose not to take ownership, that we could have a fallback to offer it to NCPRD and have sort of a belts and braces approach to helping ensure public ownership of the tract.
You can do that,
And now, isn't there a requirement that there's supposed to be 20% open space as well?
It's actually, I think it's a third of the net acreage is supposed to be open space.
So does that, I would say that you kind of lose most of your open space if you're going to give it away to the city. Do we need a variance or anything like that for this, or?
I think in terms of what's being proposed for the planned development, the open space tract is part of the proposal. So the applicant would be meeting the requirement, even if the final ownership ends up being by the city instead of by a homeowners association. So they wouldn't, giving it to the city doesn't make it automatically, immediately out of compliance with its own approval.
The planned development covers that land.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to make sure that something wasn't going to come up later. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you, guys. Okay. Let's see. We got through that. All right. Now we'll go into have we received any correspondence? Oh. Yeah, I guess. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Applicant, please. It's this. I ran into this the last time. It's missing something in the book. In my script, yes. So the applicant, please come.
We can put it back up for you.
I had some suggested language in the slide. I didn't.
Okay, that was just proposed. You weren't complying with this.
Right.
Good evening again. I'm Sarah Breakstone with Dowell. Do you need my address again? Do we need to do that? Okay. 720 Southwest Washington Street, Portland, Oregon, 97205. So we're going to try to keep it really brief so that we have time for public testimony and have time for you guys to talk. And I think Brett really covered most of what kind of hit the highlights. So we'll try to get through this quickly. Once again, this is our revised site plan. Since the last time we met, we have resubmitted materials to the city, so we have a complete plan set now that reflects this new site plan. Revised traffic information, revised natural resources, floodplains, kind of revised narratives. So a whole complete package has been submitted, and you've probably had a chance to take a look at that. A few highlights. and things that seemed like they were really key considerations for you when we last met. The white oak preservation. There has been a site visit with the arborist and city staff. Scott was there. He can tell you a little bit more about how that went. We've submitted a revised traffic analysis reflecting the new counts that were done on June 1st, and we have some new floodplain calculations. So starting with the trees, maybe Scott can tell you a little bit more about the site visit and what they found.
Yeah, during our site visit, we met with Morgan Holland, our tree arborist, Brett Kelver, City of Milwaukee, and a few other folks on site to discuss potential impacts to the white oaks and some understory vegetation camas that I learned about. So our revised site plan does include shifting the lots to the east, so therefore we were able to preserve all of the white oaks. We do have some retaining walls on site that Brett noted earlier in order to keep any potential fills out of the actual drip line of those trees. So our tree arborist went out and actually measured the actual drip lines. And with the retaining walls, we still have about a 3 to 4 foot buffer on most of the trees. There's one tree that comes within about 2 or 3 feet of the drip line, but for the most part, we're keeping all of the impacts outside of that measured drip line. We originally, as Brett mentioned earlier, we did have a sidewalk that meandered through the white oak area at the very south end. And learning about the camas and such, we decided, okay, there's an alternative here. We can take that sidewalk crossing, go due south, and as Brett mentioned earlier, we're going to put the curb line, we're proposing the curb line to fall in roughly the same location as the existing back of walk. So the only impacts are vertical during excavation, which we'll have somebody on site to do some tree root evaluation during construction. That's about it on the trees.
Great. Quickly on traffic, I think I'll just summarize the revised traffic analysis, and Zachary Horowitz from Kittleson is here to answer questions if you have more detailed questions that I'm probably not able to answer. They did do new traffic counts on June 1st, the day that school was in session. They did those 3 intersections that are listed there. There was an incremental increase in traffic volumes on that day, but the overall results were that the intersections studied are still fall within acceptable levels of service. And just, this is the table from the memo that Kittleson provided, and you can see that particularly the intersection at 224 and Rusk, the AM and PM peak results do go up, but again, still operating within acceptable levels of service, excuse me, per ODOT standards. I'll also note that there was and we just got this today, there was comments from ODOT on that particular intersection, and they note that ODOT standards are met. The intersection may continue to experience congestion. The addition of a northbound right turn lane will improve intersection operations now as well as in the future. So the addition of that right turn lane that we've been talking about will help to mitigate some of the impacts that are shown in this traffic study. Scott, you want to talk a little bit about?
So floodplain, as Brett mentioned earlier, our pre and post floodplain graphics showed a floodplain that was taken at a 70-foot elevation. So for example, the highest point on our site, which is basically the due north point where Mount Scott Creek enters the site underneath Highway 224, that flood elevation is roughly 70 feet in elevation. So our previous flood impact analysis applied that 70-foot elevation across the entire site. It did not actually follow the FEMA model as it drops in elevation as it goes down Mount Scott Creek. We were able to mitigate that elevation or using that 70-foot elevation on our previous site plan. When we moved to our alternative site plan, it was brought to our attention that there are two different zones that enter the site. So zone AE, which is on that north side of the dashed line, basically Mount Scott Creek, we kept the 70-foot elevation as it applies all the way through the creek and showing that flood elevation along the south side of the creek. There's a zone AO, which is the lower node where the kind of the 45-degree bend occurs in the entry road. The FEMA map shows a 1 foot increase or 1 foot depth of flood elevation. When we apply that to our actual topo, that brings that flood elevation up to 67. So we do have two different zones that we're showing on this map. We're applying all of the finished floor elevations to the homes to the worst case scenario of elevation 70 as it enters the site on Mount Scott Creek. But we're also indicating what the flood impact is through zone AO on that southern node. So we're doing two different things with our flood maps. I think what Brett might be referring to in terms of a happy medium is it could be that when we do our floodplain impact, we could apply the actual FEMA model as it goes downstream along Mount Scott Creek, thus that flood elevation drops. So if we apply that happy medium, it'll actually probably lower the flood elevation as it transitions down Mount Scott Creek. So for the two calculation purposes, that's why we're showing the two different zones on our flood map. I can dive into all the details all day long, but I'll bore you to death.
So just quickly, there were a couple of conditions of approval in the revised staff report that I think need to be updated because they're not reflecting the right track labels. The tracks changed a little bit with the revised site plan. So those are listed there. Condition 2C2 talks about tracks E, F, and H. I think those should probably be H and I. And then 2F currently talks about tracks G, E, and F, and I think those need to be updated as well. So just bookkeeping, but want to make sure that gets in there. We're here to take questions if you have them, or did you have something more you wanted to add?
I'm sorry, could you flip back to that last slide for me, please?
This one?
Thank you. Yep.
Sure.
Any questions?
I would like to add one more thing. Our alternative site plan does result in one access point and one emergency access point. Working back and forth with the city, we understand that the engineering staff does not oppose the one access point given the number of units that we've got here. We are applying for a variance because we exceeded the number of units off of one access, but we have provided the emergency access and kind of brainstorming some other ideas about, I'd like to know what the concerns are, if there are any concerns for the one access point. But I did want to point out that the engineering staff does not oppose it.
I'm glad you brought that up because I was wondering there is some concern about cutting through the church parking lot. Have you discussed that with the church at all, or like thought about ways that you might address that should that become the scenario? Yeah, the church does have one entrance. Part of our proposal is to eliminate the egress out of the church parking lot at the very southeast corner of their site, allow it to be an entrance only. We do have a connection point immediately adjacent to the church building. We could provide signage saying this is not a public
public through street of any kind. It's for church members only, churchgoers. So
There will also be improvements to that entrance point onto Rusk that make it more difficult to exit. Because currently, you're not exit is prohibited at that point. But what we've heard is that people kind of do it anyway and exit out onto Rusk Road. So that we will be making improvements to that access point so that becomes more clear that you're not supposed to exit there, and it makes it more difficult to exit there. So, the thinking is that would discourage people from using the church property to get in and out of the townhomes.
Could you please draw a boundary of the land that you are willing to donate to the city?
Yeah, so that would basically be tract E. If I can get this to work, I will try to do that. So, like this.
Yeah, perfect.
I think down into here. I think technically this too.
Correct.
And then all the way up and back. Back down. It's about 7 acres.
And you are willing to donate it, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, we had that discussion earlier today, and the message is willing to donate.
Commissioner Burns, I see that look on your face. I know what that means. Would you like to ask a question?
No, I'm good.
Are you good? Okay.
That's what I was wondering about.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I may have jumped the gun, but I'm going to say this for you, Brett. Sorry. Have we received any correspondence on this matter other than those items in the meeting packet?
Well, yes. I mean, earlier, within the last few days, we sent you what we have some copies of up here. There was the kind of a comment that Sarah referenced from ODOT. It was their response to the revised traffic study. We sent that to you in advance. Earlier today, this morning, we sent you the comments from ODFW, the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, some additional comments from them about the proposal. And then we weren't able to email you this, but we did also earlier today get comments back, basically an adjusted memo from DKS, the city's traffic consultant, that was reflecting their review of the supplemental traffic memo. So that one we hand delivered to you along with copies of the one from ODOT and ODFW. And there are copies of those here, and also a few out on the table, I think, if anyone wants to look at those.
Brett, I can't really decipher what ODFW is saying in their email here.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. Yes, fair question. So it's a 4-page chain of emails. The first basically 3 pages are my correspondence with the ODF and W representative, Susan Barnes, who I was coordinating with to ask if they were going to provide any more comments. On the very last page, that starts from Todd Alsbury. He's the ODF and W staffer who provided some comments earlier in conjunction with the May hearings. So essentially this is also a chain between him and Susan. Essentially, his new comments, they're pretty spare, but they're at the very bottom of the last page here. I have significant concern from a water quality perspective, et cetera. I thought I'd just give you the whole chain so you could see the questions.
And just to be sure that the city's requirement is not 100 feet away from a creek, correct?
Yeah, the city's dealing with the rules that we have in place in section 19.402 for water quality resource areas and habitat conservation areas.
I'm sorry for taking that out of turn. I apologize. Good?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, on to public comment. Commissioner Burns is going to run our timer. I think what we're going to do, I have I have 4. They were given to me in order put together by Denny Egger, so if you don't like your order, you can always blame him. And since we have 4, I'll set the timer for 5 minutes, and then that will give us time to at least start deliberations today. So Commissioner Burns is going to be running the timer. I don't know, it starts off green, I think, and then it blinks at yellow with like a minute to go, and then when it hits red, then you're at that. I think it makes a noise too.
Ejection sheet.
Yeah, there's an ejection seat. So we'll start off with, and excuse me if I butcher the name, Kirby Broderick? Broderick? And state your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, my name is Kirby Broderick. I live at 6109 Southeast Eric Street. And so I just have some general questions, I guess, also for the planning committee. So I'm just curious, are you guys seeking this level of density with other developments that are happening in Milwaukee? The one that you talked about earlier tonight was up to 12 lots on the 3 lots if they're all developed, which would be about the same size as this. So 92 versus 12, it doesn't seem that you are. So I kind of just question if that's the right purpose of this land, given that it's on sensitive land, and if that's the right outcome for the community. The 92 people who are going to live there are way more than 92 people, right? So what really makes the site unique if they're going to give the land away? You pointed that out earlier. I think what's critical about that is they're giving away actually the liability for the land to the city. So is the city sort of, in the North Clackamas Parks Department, are they willing to assume all the responsibility if this 92, this community of 92 homes, uses too much fertilizer or changes their oil in the wrong way and the drainage goes into the wetlands because that's how it drains, right? So I think that's a critical question, and there's language in there that says if the homeowners association is going to be the stewards of it, that they have to have, plans for that. So is the city sort of just assuming all the responsibility for that? And is that fair? Does that make the design extremely unique and good for the community? Or is it just that they happen to have a site that's half the land is undevelopable, and so they're going to give away all the liability, but be able to keep and leverage the benefits of it? So is that the right move for the developers, or is that the right move for Milwaukee as a community, right? The FEMA rules that were brought up at the last meeting, those are being designed to protect people, right? Not to slow development or anything like that. So it's clear that the majority of this land lies within the 500-year floodplains and our plains. And while that's not the rules of the land today, it's, we're humans. We should be able to kind of see into the future. And if flooding is going to be an issue, and it will be at this site, are we making the right choice? So should we maximize the density here, or should we do something to mitigate the long-standing sort of debt of planning that maybe wasn't done appropriate prior, right? So to alleviate the homes that are to the north in Mount Scott's, that actual floodplain where FEMA's buying houses and taking them off the market. So maybe there'd be something better that the city and the community could do with a smaller site. I'm not opposed to developing this site. It's a great spot, right? That's why I live there. It's just at this level and this, pace, who's maximizing the benefit here. So the traffic study, I understand it's, conducted on sort of accepted norms, and the trip count is this fixed number, but if I read it right, it's saying that 37 trips will occur out of this community of 92 doors at peak hours, and these homes are going to be dual income earners. That does not pass any smell test. There's no way that it's only going to be 37 trips outbound. I get it, that's what the math says. I like math too, but again, we're humans, right? And we have to kind of weigh, like, does this really add up? Is it going to be a good place to live for the 92 people, or more like 100 and some odd people that are trying to get to work, right, in the AM? And if you think that people won't cut through the church, they'll go to confession and they'll cut through the church parking lot. You won't be, if you're the person at the very end of the line, you'll have a 10-minute commute to get out of your community. I guess you'll have to weigh that when you're purchasing your home, but, it'll be a bummer every day for that person, right? And so today is, we can help to shape that. Is it more appropriate maybe to have less homes in this facility? Is it more appropriate maybe to, work with some different design aspect that would provide walkability, right? There's nothing except for the park that these people can walk to, and that's, is that the best outcome that we can hope for, right? I think that it's worth weighing, is it this particular development or nothing, right? Or is it this particular development or any other development that may come along? Is it, it's not, this choice isn't in a vacuum. It sort of has to weigh into the context of what the quality of life will be for the residents, the impact and how that fits into the community as is. Something that hasn't really been talked about much since the original meetings was that over half of this land is actually zoned R10. The half that's zoned R3 was done so on a contingency basis so that it would be for senior living and whatnot, which is a real appropriate usage of this house. It isn't a place where you should have dual income, families living on a tiny, postage stamp of a yard that they're trying to fertilize right onto the wetlands. It just seems egregious, given the circumstances. So I think as planners, you guys, it's up to you sort of to steward the land, right, and make the best choice for the community, right? And so I just ask that you do that. I did the timer right. Yes.
Very good. Thank you. Any questions?
I think so. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
For all you do.
So just let them know, now we know how the timer goes for 4 minutes. The green starts blinking when you have 1 minute. The yellow goes on at 30 seconds, just to let everybody know. I apologize for not quite knowing the sequence for you. Next up is Wallace Brown.
Good evening. My name is Wallace Brown, and I live at 5824 Southeast Kellogg Creek Drive. I'm that corner house right down there, so I'm living right across the street from this development. And, I addressed the commission before, and I guess one question I have is, we talk about, for the density bonus, this idea of outstanding and exceptional, and I don't know the answer to this, but I'm not sure what the boundary for that is. Is that it's outstanding and exceptional for this 92 unit development, or is it for the area? I know that just talking to my neighbors and stuff, there's this concern that, the area around this is the unincorporated Clackamas County, and there's a big concern that, what's going to happen for us, right? Just where this lot's located, the impact is going to be to the unincorporated Clackamas County folks. And so one concern I would have is, does that outstanding and exceptional apply to us as well? How far does that extend? And obviously it can't extend, continuously and forever, but that's my concern. I cut through that church parking lot, I live right there. I do it all the time. So I don't know that a sign's going to prevent me from doing that. I'll just to be completely honest with you guys. But that's my concern. I would like to see more young families move into that neighborhood, especially with the park right there, right? I mean, it's a great area. I work down the street at Blunt. I live right there. I mean, this is the area that I've decided to make my home for the foreseeable future. So I want to see it grow and develop. I'd like to see more families in there. I'd like to see, young kids who can walk right down the street to that wonderful park. But my concern is that outstanding and exceptional, and where is that applied? My concerns for my own property, getting out of there is going to be a little bit more difficult with the traffic, but that's an inconvenience. The flooding that my property already sees every fall and winter, that's a concern. That has the potential to be actual property damage, and that's something that, I don't know, maybe I should have taken into consideration when we purchased the land, but, I didn't. So now that's my concern. But I would just encourage you guys to and I'm not sure, again, what outstanding and exceptional, where that boundary is, but, those are my concerns.
Any questions for Mr. Brown?
I do have a question. This consideration of what is outstanding is really challenging, and I wonder do you have thoughts on what would be outstanding to you for this site?
I I would say that, when I addressed you guys before, I kind of talked about risk management and how if we do the minimum required, we're maximizing risk. So, the addition of a right turn lane at Rusk and 2224 is huge. That's just going to help alleviate what's already kind of a gnarly traffic situation. Anything that the developer can do to go above and beyond is minimizing risk. I will say that the idea of that walking path is pretty awesome. That's going to be pretty slick out there, and so just from the walkability of that neighborhood, which is not a walkable neighborhood, that's pretty cool. But so those kind of things. I mean, anything above and beyond.
Thank you.
Thank you. Vince Alvarez, and typically we give double the amount of time for, okay.
Vince Alvarez, 12671 Wells Lane, speaking as the chairman and treasurer of Lake Road NDA. A lot of concerns were raised at some of our previous meetings about this development. I like a lot of the changes that were made. I think it's in the right direction. I do agree with the previous speaker about the fact of donating the White Oak Preserve and the creek frontage to the city is actually beneficial to them as well as to preserving it. I mean, it's like, I don't think a lot of homeowners associations would want to be responsible for all that property. They don't have the money to keep it up. So to get rid of it, but then being able to present it to a potential buyer as, look at this great park you got in front of you, but we don't have to, it's not costing us anything. It's great for them. And it's good for the city too. It's good for everybody. So it's kind of a win-win for everybody. I see plenty of builders building single homes and being able to make a profit when they build a single home and sell it to a single buyer. And I understand by increasing the amount of units to the maximum possible, they're going to increase their profits. And that is something as a company is very desirable to them. How do we get the most money back most return on our investment? But I think it's the Planning Commission's job and the city's job to say, well, it'd be great if Blanc could just dump their pollution right into the creek too, and if it maximizes their profits, but we don't allow them to do that. And in a situation like this, I saw the flooding that took place there 2 years ago, and I have a friend across the street whose home was severely damaged by flooding. He did not get the FEMA buyout. But it just seems to me that we are in an increasing situation. I'm not sure where the city stands on climate change. I believe it exists. And I believe that our flood instances are going to get greater. Building upstream is continuing as well. So there's more pavement continually being put in upstream. So we're going to see more of an impact downstream. We're going to be seeing more flooding. So the flooding conditions and the flooding maps that exist as of today are probably going to be inadequate in 10, 15 years. And I would like to say, I would remove my objections. Some of my neighborhood people would probably still object to the traffic situation. And I've been in there, and the traffic can be miserable at times, especially when the games are letting out of that park. But my personal objection, if we remove those 12 units there to the west, I'd be a lot happier with the project. And I don't think they would they would still wind up with a substantial amount of profit. I know they would wind up with more profit by including that section there. But, to every life, a little rain must fall. So that's where I'm at. See, didn't need the 10.
There you go. Any questions for Mr. Alvarez? Okay, thank you. Next up is Chris Runyard, please.
Good evening, Chris Runyard, once again from Northeast Portland. For years I've been up and down Mount Scott and Kellogg, and I would venture to guess that there's probably no one in the watershed or near the watershed that knows the whole watershed more than I do. I've met with so many landowners, and so many times, I can't even count, that people want to know what they could do about their flooding, and I look at them, and you can move. You could sell your house if someone would buy it. I wouldn't buy it, that is. There's so many places on Mount Scott and Kellogg and you can go south too to River Forest, Boardman, or Reinerson Creek too. Everyone floods, and they all didn't used to flood this bad. And so when you talk to the old timers, they all have something that happened upstream they point to that caused the flooding. And so in my brain for years now, I've been like, hey, if we could just change codes, if I could just talk to city council or the county commissions, whoever's authorizing these projects, and have them think harder about how we do things along the creek, then all the people that are going to flood downstream could get some relief. Because usually they can't, because it's all structural. And so when I hear the 92 development and we're going to trade 1 for 1 or 1.1 for 1 or we're going to cut and fill, like, I get why they want to do it. They're going to make some profit and they want 92 and they're kind of crying poor, like, oh, 80 won't do it. It's got to be 92. And everyone's like, oh, 92, we can stuff them in. Then we can cut and fill, make new wetlands. If we do it just right, we won't have to kill all the oaks. It's not enough for the watershed. And I'm talking up to Happy Valley and the unincorporated Clackamas all the way down through Milwaukee. Everyone's doing it to each other. And when Happy Valley takes out their beaver dam and you guys are getting all that water, Rusk Rd floods get bought out by FEMA, like it's all the same deal. Minthorn destroyed and all that water's coming down here. Someday, everyone's got to figure that out and do something different. And so this seems like kind of the business as usual. Developer comes in, we got a natural resource guy to say it's all going to be fine. But then you have Todd Ellsbury from the Fish and Wildlife, who I'll stick with him as far as an expert over anyone in this room, including myself. Significant concern for water quality, yada, yada, yada. He also had one the last time we were here. He also wrote a big thing, or Susan Barnes did, also Fish and Wildlife. And the team for the builders kind of poo-pooed it as just a general letter you don't really have to be concerned with. I'm concerned because Mount Scott and Kellogg is a fish-bearing stream, Coho, Steelhead, Cutthroat, and at least brook lampreys. And there's a big project to try to get the dam out. When that comes out, then the fish are free to come in. And you got great places like North Clackamas Park, Three Creeks, along Mount Talbert, up 122nd, that are ready for the fish and have some, barely. And so these kind of projects aren't helping anything. And that's why I'm here. My third trip down here, I rode my bike from Northeast Portland. It takes me like an hour, but it's important. This project, the question was earlier, have they done enough to avoid and minimize and mitigate? Maybe if you got to stuff 92 in, you got to do something. But who says you got to stuff 92 units in? Why can't it be 80 and get rid of that whole west 12 section that is in the lowlands, which is all soggy? Why do you have to go encroach on the WQR or the HCA or the wetlands or the soggy lowlands? We started with, we want 92, we're going to do all this stuff and we'll build some new wetlands and eventually we'll donate some land. But that's kind of, why did we start there? Why don't we start, here's the areas we want to conserve and here's the wetlands we want to improve, and then here's the area that could be built on. Now how many can you fit up there? And maybe it's 70 or 80, maybe there's an apartment or condos or something else. But it kind of blows my mind why 92 are going in and we're encroaching on all these sensitive areas. Fish and Wildlife people are saying, don't encroach on these areas. City's trying to get dams out to bring fish back into these creeks. People live on these places and they're awesome. And we're still kind of like, well, it's okay if we destroy some of this. And that's probably all I got tonight. So, thanks.
Any questions for Mr. Brendan? Thank you. Yep. And Mr. Shook.
Keeping me up late.
Me too.
Dick Shook, 4815 Southeast Casa Del Rey Drive, unincorporated, Clackamas County, 97222. I'm a 40-year resident of living next to the park on the north side above the dog run. And one of the things that concerns me is these houses are crammed in and there's no play area for children. They don't have yards, there's no playground. They're going to be access to the park to the west of them, and there is a nice playground, but it's going to be overcrowded. It's used by a couple school groups during the day with young children, and it's too bad that they have to cram so many houses in that the kids don't have a place to play. And the other thing it's going to have with additional people coming down into the park, and I live on a public path that comes from the neighborhood down into the park, so I see its use of this public access is increasing every year. But anyway, it's going to have an impact on the wildlife. Today I saw a great blue heron walking downstream very slowly. Kingfisher, deer, this is all in the last week, and a chipmunk, which we haven't seen before, and have seen it for the first time the last couple of years. It's too bad we don't have more open space. We're, like Mr. Runyard said, we're losing our open space more rapidly than we can afford. So would like to, see these developments be more practical and not consume all the ground area. That's about all I've got to say at this time.
Any questions for Mr. Tripp?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And next up is Greg Bartz-Boatman, please.
Hi there, Greg Bartz-Boatman, 10677 Southeast 28th Avenue in Milwaukee. I wasn't going to speak tonight. I spoke at the last meeting, and I felt I made my position clear, and I felt it was a position that a lot of people in Milwaukee hold, and I tried to point out examples of why we hold that. And I figured that if Chris Runyard could bike another hour here and bike an hour home and speak about the issues here, that as a resident, I should probably just chime in. And mainly, I just want to say, I've been working alongside Chris just as a filmmaker and kind of exploring what he's been doing in the Kellogg Mount Scott watershed. And in the 10 years or 10 years I've been doing it, I've learned so much. And I've learned about the importance, more than anything, of the protection of the watershed and the protection of white oaks, how important they are to our livability. And I think Chris's comments tonight about how we're really here with business as usual, letting the developer kind of cash in on the small part of the environment that we have left that's still sort of in its natural state. I think as a planning commission, we should be planning for the future and protection of those areas. And I'd really like you to take what Chris said to heart tonight, because I think it was really important, and I think that it also is the truth. So, thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Bartz-Boatman?
All right.
Thank you, sir. Okay, does any member of the Planning Commission have any questions regarding the testimony to this point?
No.
I do have a question. And I believe it was in a write-up earlier in all of the packets, but about the original zone change to R3 for the senior housing development. What that was, the first testimony said that was conditional. Can you clarify that or remind me of the status of that? It wasn't conditional, right?
I don't have that staff report in front of me, and I don't remember that detail to be able to say. Unfortunately, my memory or understanding is that there were a couple of parts. There was an actual zone change that was approved and stuck, and that's why we have the site split zoned R10 and R3. And I don't remember the reference, the type of approval that that senior project went through. I think it was some kind of
You know, it would have been
conditional approval or community service use or something.
I really don't know, but I can say that a senior housing development in that zone is a conditional use, is it not? So it would,
say yes.
It may have been a zone change paired with a conditional use. I'm speculating, but you know what? It's unusual in one sense to condition a zone change. It's not good practice because then if it doesn't happen, what happens? The zone sits there, it goes away. What happens? So but I don't know the answer to your question.
Okay.
Could you refresh everybody what percentage was R3 and what percentage was R10, if you remember that right? On this part, it's like 70% R3 and like...
Give me a second. I'm referring to... I don't... I'm guessing. I'm looking at one of the figures in the natural resource report where the applicant provided an alternative site plan. This is figure 5B in the applicant's revised natural resource report, and that shows an alternative development plan that also shows the boundary, the zoning boundary there. It looks more like it's probably closer to 50-50 than 70% R10. It's not a straight boundary.
I know if I would have brought my planning commissioner's book, there's a map that is readily available in there.
Actually, it looks more like about a third R10 and 2/3 R3 to me.
And that's with the R3, though, extending across Mount Scott Creek to the north.
Correct.
Right. Seeing 9.6 acres of R3 and 4.4 acres of R10.
Oh, there you go.
Okay. Land use narrative.
So about 70-30. Thereabouts.
70-30 R3, you're saying.
Any other questions at this testimony at this point?
I have a question about the city liability point that was brought up. I mean, in terms of thinking about, issues that may arise with contamination for the area. What would that mean in terms of the city liability for cleanup, and can you quantify that, or do you have anything that you're thinking about putting in place around mitigating for that?
Yeah, I think the thinking about that is that what NCPRD stated pretty clearly, I think both in the letter that they presented, but also in conversations that we had with NCPRD staff, was that especially if they owned it, but even if the city owns it and we do an IGA to have them manage it, what they're going to want to do is make sure that that piece is incorporated into the park master plan and what other things they're already trying to do and achieve in North Clackamas parks. So my thinking in response to the liability question is that, yes, while it is true that it is passing to some degree some liability to the city and or NCPRD, one way to control that is we will have control of it. And so in this case, letting NCPRD manage it in a way that fits with their other objectives in terms of how it will be accessed, where there will be what facilities. For example, on this plan, we've seen the concept of the soft surface trail system with one path meandering through the Oaks area and another path on the north side. If the city takes possession of this and North Clackamas Parks and Rec starts managing it, they may decide that a soft surface path or any path in the White Oak area is not really appropriate. It doesn't really fit with what they're trying to achieve in that part of the park. So one of the things we wanted to say in the revised conditions was that we're understanding this to some degree as a conceptual plan, and not necessarily that is exactly where a path will go. So to get at the question of how they'll manage pollutants or quantification of certain things, I mean, I think they seemed open and eager for the opportunity to kind of incorporate it into what they're already doing and trying to achieve in North Clackamas Park. and that's a way to mitigate maybe some of the liability. We'll control access points and how parts of the site are used that way through NCPRD.
I guess we do code enforcement for people that currently would dump something over their fence into a park. It's I don't know that we usually do it on a complaint basis, but we would enforce if that happened.
Yeah. Okay.
Does the applicant have any rebuttal or any additional comments in response to the public testimony?
Just quickly, someone testified that there was not a play area for kids on the site. I just want to point out that there is, in fact, a play structure proposed in open space. I can't read it. Right to the west of that cul-de-sac, that bulb. That is a community garden and play structure for children. So just wanted to highlight that. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, here we go. The public testimony portion on hearing number PD 2017-001 is now closed. Is the commission ready for discussion?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to start off this way. And so what we need to decide tonight is does the proposed development have enough benefit to warrant the extra lots? And we have a condition that the city has given us about the street or a second access in as well. So let's start off with the larger one. So the rules state that you're allowed up to 80 lots in this area. And they were looking for, let's just go out to the 92 and then we can work on the access to the street. So I agree with Mr. Runyon's assessment that water quality resource areas, habitat conservation areas, and all those should be off limits to development. But unfortunately, that's not the way that the rules read and that we are allowed to do that. And that there are people in this room that would also agree that private property, that people can do things on their private property, and it may or may not be the government's role to take over people's private property. As a huge amount of benefit to this development, 7 acres of at least mostly water quality resource, the white oaks, and the habitat is at least preserved until the city wants to develop it itself, if that's what they wish to do, I guess, in the long run. But at least it's preserved and will be there forever. 5 years down the road, somebody can come up and, with the rules that are allowed, could just go ahead and cut and fill it and do it anyways. There is no tree ordinance. I mean, there's no reason to say, there is no rule that says that those trees need to be saved.
So my thought on that is, we're going to be updating the comprehensive plan, and in reviewing that, this site should not be zoned R3 to begin with, and that there should be consideration for all of the natural resource areas. There should be, and it sounds like the planning process would be more integrated, so there would be an opportunity to really look at that. But that's my feeling is, the way it currently is, it's R3, 80 units, that's what is on the books that can happen. But I think in this process that we're about to engage in the city, I would say that 5 years from now, if this isn't developed, this should be rezoned, and it should not be R3.
Is the city ever going to get an opportunity to own this property and protect it and preserve it? Even if it's R10. I could still cut, fill, chop down all the trees.
Mm-hmm.
There is a huge opportunity to protect the habitat and the water quality resources that are there for the remainder of our lifetimes. I think that is a huge benefit. If you take it away and grant them the 80 lots, yeah, they're going to have to come up with this R3, and I would probably change around that neighborhood a lot different way, and I probably wouldn't save as much. I think that the benefit of saving this habitat, this water quality resource, and the white oaks for the purpose of the city to maintain its natural beauty for the rest that the city owns it is a huge benefit. I won't even get into, hey, it even meets the criteria of the different housing types that the city, that the vision area plan and the new comp plan is going to be clamoring for, right? And you can, people get confused about the definition of affordable housing, and actually, the medium price range may or may not be already a medium price range on an R5 lot as it is anyways for that size square footage. But it presents at least different type of housing options. But for me, the huge benefit is preserving that land. This is an opportunity to do it.
I'm torn by the notion that turning the habitat tract over to the city is truly a win-win, and maybe something that would be prudent for the developers to do even if it weren't an outstanding feature, just to take the liability and the maintenance off. And so I do think getting this into the hands of the city or the parks is absolutely the outcome I want. But is that an outstanding thing, or is it a fair compromise that they would be willing to make?
I want you to explain to me the liability that the developer has.
When the land is maintained by the city or the parks district, the operations and maintenance of that cost is shared by the entire community, whereas if that land is owned by the homeowners association, the operations and maintenance costs are spread amongst the 92 property owners.
I get it. So what is their liability to that land?
They would be required to meet whatever conditions are placed on that land as part of the development in the homeowners covenant, and that could include...
No, on what we decide. There is no, actually, they don't have to do anything to that land.
Well, I think...
You understand that, right? If they own it, they own it. That's what I don't, I mean, I get the liability thing that, yeah, somebody might throw their oil over the edge of the fence, but you're really going to, it's just a private landowner, the homeowner association, they can do anything they want with that.
That's the part I'm trying to understand, that turning that land over to the city or the parks district is such a huge benefit. Is that in and of itself outstanding?
Right, yeah.
And
the homeowners association could decide to go tomorrow with the current rules that we have and go cut down 5 or 6 oaks and go start a big bonfire out there. Now, wouldn't you rather have the city and a park allow at least their rules to be able to do it? That's why I don't get it. Yeah. You're going to leave up, you're just assuming that they're going to be. You're just assuming they're going to be good stewards of the land.
You're putting that in really stark terms, and when you throw out an extreme, like
it's not an extreme.
No, for the purpose of this dialogue, it would help me to tone it down just a little bit.
All right, I'm sorry.
But you're influencing me, and I think that's what you're trying to do.
Well, that's right. That's the point. So once again, if the homeowner association owns the land, okay, they don't have to be good stewards to it.
And that...
They don't have to be. You're just assuming that they are.
Yeah, and so the basis for that assertion is the fact that there's just no rules to prevent. There are rules to prevent dumping oil in the creek. There are rules, because this would be a planned development, even if it was not receiving the outstanding bonus.
Right, it would end up being,
under the
you could have 80 lots.
rules,
right.
With 80 lots, are we still able to apply conditions like a trail with access to the public? Are we still able to apply conditions? That is not as clear to me as it seems to be to you, and I just want to understand why you're, the basis for why you're so clear that as a planned development, it's either all or nothing in terms of the protection for this land.
No. All I'm saying is that you are assuming that the HOA is going to be good stewards of the land. What I'm trying to do is the benefit of the city owning it and the citizens of Milwaukee and Clackamas County owning it or North Clackamas County, I guess I should say.
In your mind, it's only because this is an outstanding development that we have the negotiating power to take public ownership of the open space tract.
Correct. If it was 80 lots...
Do the other commissioners have the same understanding that the outstanding bonus is our only hook to negotiate public ownership of the open space tract?
If I thought of the likelihood of how this is developed in timeline, considering the applicant, what they put forward in these agreements in place, I feel like that's the likelihood is that the bonus is enabling that aspect of city ownership and protection. But there are, I don't want to put every hypothetical out there. Right. I mean, we hope economic circumstances are fortuitous to enable that they build and sell all of these, right? If they don't, if they had a homeowner association, but there was an economic collapse, there would be a bunch of sitting properties and issues of stormwater runoff. I don't want to get into too many hypotheticals, but I see a likelihood because of what Commissioner Hamer is pointing out, is that this application and the bonus development allowances and the conditions that we have come to this point with probably make it a likelihood for the city being the custodian and owner and
property. If the only outcome that results in city ownership and protection of the oaks and the wetland is through 92 units, that to me is an outstanding outcome. But I hadn't been so clear as Commissioner Hamer is that was the only outcome that would lead to public ownership and protection.
Right, and I can't say that's the only outcome. I just feel like I can see I could see what this development promises.
Mr. Chairman, just to comment on the legal parameters, if you were trying to force the dedication, we would be subject then to proportionality analysis. We would have to be able to make the case that we had a record that showed that the impact of the subdivision was sufficient, that the dedication we were requiring was proportional. And so that would be the analysis you'd have to go through. You'd have to say 80 units, for example, creates enough recreational demand that you would have to dedicate this amount in order to satisfy a proportionality standard. That would be how you'd have to do it. And I won't venture a guess as to how creative our staff could be on that, but I would assume that would be a difficult burden.
Versus a bonus allowance?
Yeah, if it's a bonus, it's a voluntary dedication. The problem is with exacting it, forcing the dedication. That's where we have the burden of proof, and we would have to build a record to support it.
The way we wrote that proposed condition was that it either be dedicated, or if the homeowners association keeps it, there needed to be some sort of long-term maintenance program that would be approved as part of it.
So are we able to ask questions at this point in the if this were not under city ownership and were under the control of an HOA, would that HOA be able to cut down white oak trees at their discretion in the habitat conservation area?
It would depend what we put in our long-term maintenance program, and it is very likely that we would require maintenance of the white oaks at this point.
So the white oaks are essentially not being held hostage by the designation of the 12 bonus units, which is, I think, what you were stating.
Don't you need a permit to cut down a tree anyway?
No.
Not in Milwaukee.
Not in the city of Milwaukee, you don't.
Yeah.
But
unless it's in a natural resource area that's designated.
And so if it is so the natural resource area provides some degree of protection, maybe less than public ownership, but some degree of protection over that area. So I don't think we're as forced into this decision as your example, seem to indicate. I'm just trying to discuss this and understand it, because this is like the approach I was hoping to take is to say, what are the features here that we might say are outstanding features, and are they is it enough to justify the 12 extra units?
Okay.
And the features that I'm seeing are the community garden with the play structure, the ability to negotiate for public access, public ownership of the land. I like the view lines from the community. I think that is an outstanding benefit to the people who are going to live here, to be able to see into this natural area. And so with those set of features, I'm kind of almost there that's outstanding, but I'm not. I feel like if it was outstanding, I would yay, but I'm still like, I don't know, maybe it's outstanding. And if it's maybe outstanding, is that outstanding? I
hear you.
Right, and is it outstanding enough to, to risk the natural resource area, I guess, in terms of like the salmon habitat and the water quality that ODF&W has flagged as a concern, So is it outstanding enough to risk some of these habitat potential issues?
And then knowing that even if it weren't outstanding, there's rights to develop that would have many, if not all, of the same impacts in a slightly different configuration. And all being said, I mean, if it's going to be 80 units or 92 and we're going to get public ownership, I feel like that meets my criteria, but I could be swayed.
It's tough.
Don't tell them that we're going to hold the oak trees hostage, because that won't persuade them.
No, of course not.
But thank you, Commissioner Burns. I also believe that one of the outstanding features, because I don't think that the 80 lots, well, actually, we could probably get that answer. Do we happen to know if there were 80 lots the same way? Would the city require the right-hand turn lane?
Don't know.
That was a no.
We don't know.
We don't know.
Yeah, we'd be talking
is that
about
because your trip generation's different?
Yes.
So you have to reanalyze it?
I mean, the difference between the 80 and the 92 is less than the difference between the old study and the new study. So I think if the right turn lane was required by the old study and the new study, 12 units isn't going to change that outcome. It seems to me. Other things that I think would be outstanding here that are missing would be going above and beyond on the water quality and flood control concerns. Pervious pavement for the right-of-way and sidewalks is something that has been deployed elsewhere in Milwaukee, and during previous testimony I asked the applicant's engineer if they were open to pervious pavement, and we had a general acceptance that is a treatment that could be applied. And I think that if we were to have a solution that sized the stormwater facilities as they're sized now and went with a more pervious solution for the pavement, that to me, I start to feel enthusiastic about calling this outstanding, as opposed to maybe it's outstanding, but maybe we're just being held hostage to protect the oak trees. And so can we, what does it take to get to outstanding for the other commissioners? Or are you there now?
That's helping. That is helping. I mean, I'm concerned about losing the natural area and the impacts that it has. And so if there are things that you can do that would be an outstanding feature that would add some value back, in protecting the resource, that seems outstanding.
What seems to me to be outstanding would be what moves a scientist from making determinations about concern, or making findings and comments about concerns of encroachment and water quality issues. So, it would be a suite of treatments and practices that are conditions that would give the scientist some sort of different finding or a different,
And
assuage a concern.
Todd from ODFW's comment was the 100 foot around the stream is his criterion, and I don't think we have a lever there other than perhaps it's not outstanding to be closer than 100 feet from the creek, but that. I think an outcome of that is, okay, we'll do a non-outstanding development that's within the 100-foot buffer, and Todd would be just as sad as he is today about the impact on the creek, or his scientific opinion, I think would not necessarily change. It's not maybe a lever that we have to pull.
Adam, what's outstanding to you?
Well, there is a community context aspect that it's been there. I'm a little bit less sympathetic about traffic generation concerns than I am pedestrian safety concerns because of a school. So they have applied solutions and design to try and address what is an existing condition now, and that is a lack of safe pedestrian access, particularly in terms of children and those seeking recreational uses because of the school and parks access. Okay? So that would be a component of it to me. Yeah, I think the city's condition about the other access point is probably valid in terms of, yet there will be a negative aspect of one access, and it will be the cut through with the parking lot. It will be queuing and all that. But I'm a little less, that to me isn't getting at the outstanding stuff as much as pedestrian and or bicycle access. That's one angle. I think that we can, if that was packaged with what I felt like we would agree on our conditions about, it's about the encroachment of the natural areas and the water quality issues. Hey, I am happy about the fact of what I've learned from the arborist conclusion. That's a move positive from the last hearings and findings with this design, this application. So, I'm not as expert on mitigation with concerning floodplain habitat areas and water quality as others here, but which is why I'm just stating, if I could hear suggestions that there is something outstanding about what can be done in conditions for that. But then I will weigh the aspect of this bonus is a condition that has introduced the city and the park district as owners and managers, custodians of open space. I do think that's a driver.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm closer than I was, As far as I'm thinking about Commissioner Travis's comment about what might be introduced as a potential change or amendment in visiting the comprehensive plan for this area. And I don't know. I don't think we can know because I'm sorry, but the era of R7s and R10s in large swaths of neighborhoods in Milwaukee is not the future. It's not what's going to happen. So I want to think about the terms, the fact that there may be R3 going forward here.
I don't hate the form of the development. I mean, I think...
And, from a sustainability angle, there's another side. I completely recognize what we're talking about with watersheds, but there's another side to it, and that is some of the most efficient things we can be doing is actually living closer together and having our resources and our utilities and our services delivered to people who are more densely located, Yeah. So there's another side to the sustainable angle. And there's another angle is that this area is going to grow because our region is growing. Some of why we're growing is because there are agreed upon scenarios for the future that people are what you would call climate refugees from other areas of the United States and even Oregon who are coming to these areas because of situations regarding weather events and, drought, water quality issues too. So, when we get to this term of outstanding, I want us to have a context of what's a reasonable look at the future, the near future. And it's likely to be more developments like this.
Mine is the protection of the water quality and the white oaks. And actually, it is creating the affordable housing units as well. It's one of the goals that council put forth. And it just seems to me that that should be considered as an outstanding feature, this development.
So how do we proceed, Mr. Chair?
Well, here's the good news, is that no matter what we decide, it's going to go in front of council and they're going to decide anyways. So all we are doing is making a recommendation to council. I guess I'm going to take a straw vote and say yay or nay if we believe that this is, that they can go above their 80 lots. Commissioner Burns?
Short answer is yay.
Thank you. Commissioner Argo?
I'll say yay on that.
Commissioner Travis?
Nay.
Commissioner Hemer will say yay. Okay, so we got that settled. Now, there is a variance that is in front of us about the street access and the dual lot, which the city has suggested that where that emergency lane is, that it be widened to allow another street.
It's not clear to me that how that works with the plat that's in front of us without shifting things further to the east or the west.
Oh yeah, basically what you would do is you would take out Yeah, that's a 22-foot wide right-of-way right now as drawn, correct?
We think 2 lots.
Right.
We think you could do it with 2 lots.
So in other words, yeah, you take out 2.
So I think a feature of this design is that it's a bit cookie cutter, right? With like the 4 in a row, and they'd have to come up with a block of 3, and we just have them do that.
So you want the street in there?
I mean, if I'm just trying to understand that that's what we would be asking for. I mean,
basically, we would be asking that street would exist as a normal right-of-way.
And so that's basically a proposal for an 88-unit development as opposed to a 92-unit development to make space for that street?
Correct.
I think what the testimony was earlier from Alex and Brett was that it could be done with a reduced right-of-way width, with a sidewalk on one side, no parking, and you could get there by taking 2 lots out and having, so 2 of the 4 plexes would need to be designed as 3 plexes.
So it would be either a 90-unit development, or they would find somewhere else to fit the 2 that are being taken out here, and that may end up, if they were to try and get the 2 back in, we've gained something in one place and lost something elsewhere, potentially.
We can condition that they can't put it back in.
That we would be approving a 90-unit development to make room for the second access.
We would approve the condition, and help me out here, we approve the condition of the widening of the road without them going outside of their lot lines. I mean, you wouldn't care if they built a 2-story 4-unit, right? But you're more concerned with them just taking up more space?
I'm not concerned. I'm just trying to understand. The last time we met, I don't think that the access was as much of an issue, so this was just a little bit of a...
Right, because, the new proposed plan, which we wanted staff to look over in more detail, and when they looked at it in more detail, it only has 1 access. So the rules say for every 20 lots, if you have a 20-lot or more subdivision, that you need to have 2 access points. And this only has 1.
I don't feel strongly about it, I suppose.
Okay.
About the
about requiring a second access. And
I'm not as strong about it either.
Commissioner Travis, do you have?
No comment.
So if I take a straw vote right now, we have either a nay or non-voter. We got a yay or no variance, a nay.
I'm not compelled.
So I would approve the variance for the emergency and fire access.
Right, of course.
Yes.
So that's what they've done with the revised plan.
Okay. So not to accept the city's proposal, but to stay with what is there. Okay, am I missing anything?
There were a couple other recommended conditions that, there was a condition that Brett had put up that wasn't in your packet regarding...
Oh, the retaining wall.
The retaining wall and some landscape screening along the retaining wall. Might pull that back up. And then Sarah had a correction to a couple conditions as well.
Right.
Does the city have any objections to their corrections?
No, we would just want to make sure we got them, they're right, but we can make that adjustment. But I wasn't able in the time given to make sure that that was the right language, but we understand that there could be a problem with the way those were outlined, and we can make sure they're correct.
I do agree with the condition for a landscaped and attractive retaining wall with vegetative screening.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So that one we got, the retaining wall, and we're in agreement on the route exploration and protection, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only one that wasn't in the packet was the retaining wall.
Okay. And to dedicate the open space track. And I don't want to blindly just give a variance to, is it a technical? Could someone please explain what the applicant was, why the applicant was worried about the tract I and J?
Oh, it was referring to the wrong tracts.
They got relabeled with the revised plan, and I didn't catch that. So I didn't.
So it's just a technical thing, right?
That's just like a Scrivener's.
Okay, so let's,
right?
we're okay to condition those in then, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can make those adjustments.
All right, did everybody get that? I have that one written down. Can you read my handwriting? That one.
Update 2.
And that one. 2.2C2.
2.2C2 to new
track
label tracks H and I.
Yeah, tracks H and I.
You can actually just generally refer to it, and we'll get.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Can we just say applicants' revisions?
Correction, technical corrections to track labels.
All right. I'll entertain a motion.
How do we read this motion?
We got two different packets, so, oh, maybe not. Here we go.
Can I just suggest that I think if I understand the conversation correctly, you'd be wanting to refer in your motion to at least the conditions, recommended conditions of approval that were included in the supplemental packet that show track changes, including yellow highlighting for things that were changed even from the version that went out in the regular packet for this meeting, as well as the recommended findings that went out in the first packet for this meeting, plus the changed there's one page of findings with some additional changes there. So maybe there's a way to kind of blanket cover everything that was put forward kind of in the latest version by staff, as well as these additional notes. Is that?
I think we're going to have to list them in the motion.
Okay. Well, so I guess I'm saying you're going to need to refer to, what you're going to want to refer to is the recommended findings that were included in the meeting packet for this meeting, in addition to the revised finding page in the supplemental document, as well as the recommended revised conditions that were in the supplemental packet, plus, anyway, just for the field of it, plus the things that you guys were just discussing, the Scrivener's errors, this particular change.
Adam's working on it.
Whew.
By the way, Commissioner Burns, excellent job on the timer this evening. I think we got our new timer. I think that works.
And I guess I just have a question. Since I oppose the density bonus, do I vote no on this? Or like, because it's all going to be lumped into one motion?
Because of condition.
Okay.
Not
even the other conditions are okay, but it's the one. Okay.
And just a reminder to everybody that's here that this is just a recommendation to council. This will be going forward to council. So if your name is on the record, you can speak and testify in front of them.
What was the date? I think it was the first meeting in September that we had targeted.
September 5th, I think. Yeah. It's the day after Labor Day. I think you can show up and testify even if you didn't put your name on the record, right? Can't you show up to the council and?
Yeah, I think we allow that typically. Thanks.
Okay. So it's findings of approval with conditions in the packet. Plus, there's a one-page revision in the supplemental packet. Plus, there's another aspect of the supplemental packet that we are weighing on.
In the supplemental packet, we gave you a complete set of the revised conditions.
Set of conditions in the, yes, thank you.
And your complete set of conditions isn't adding a secondary street in, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Is not?
Is not.
Okay.
That was an idea we put out there.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Do I got it?
You got the applicant's condition as
Plus
well?
applicant's correction, technical correction, Scrivener. Scrivener notes. I'll just say Scrivener notes to noted Scrivener corrections. Okay. All right. Make a motion to approve the findings of approval with conditions in the packet sent to Planning Commission, as well as the one-page revision in the supplemental packet. Additionally, the complete set of conditions listed in the supplemental packet, plus the applicant's noted Scrivener notes updating some of the text in the packet.
The retaining wall.
And also the condition of the retaining wall, condition 2J.
Second?
Second the motion.
So moved by Commissioner Argo, seconded by Commissioner Burns. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 3-1. Thank you. I want to thank everybody that has come to testify all this time. Keep up the good work. You guys are going to need each other to try to get that transportation, try to get some busing there and everything else. So enjoy your new neighbors. And go to City Council. Planning Department, other business?
None.
Planning Commission updates. All right, I'm going to be really brief. Okay, you guys ready? Write them all down.
Starting the timer.
July 29th, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m., Gone But Not Forgotten at the Milwaukee Pioneer Cemetery. They got new headstones. August 4th, First Friday, is the Trolley Trail Experience starting at 6 p.m. We are going to take a walk down the trolley trail with explanations of what you see. Don't forget, every Sunday is the Farmers Market. August 5th is the Linwood Community Day from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Wichita Park. And August 5th, starting at dusk, is the Movie in the Dark, sponsored by Historic Neighborhood, and check the city's website for location.
38 seconds, Greg. Well done.
Not bad, huh? All right.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Travis, seconded by Commissioner Burns. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks.